Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was abandoned by his family and had the Dragon of Evolution and copying Sacred Gear Part 1. Before we start, please go support Albro 13,000 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Prologo. Thousands of ages ago in the past, a war took place. What war? The biblical war where three races fought each other, the angels led by the biblical God, the creator and original father of everything known. The demons, led by the daughter of God, Lucifer, the ex-archangel who fell for his pride and was punished by his father for it. And the fallen angels who sinned and were banished from heaven for no longer being pure, led by Azazel. The war brought the death of hundreds of thousands of people from the three different races, including the human race, a race that had been created by God in his image and likeness, of course, with differences, but that did not matter. The war involved them and caused thousands of human deaths since they did not have any way to protect or save themselves, so the biblical God, seeing this, had the idea of creating the objects that would be known as sacred gear, sealed objects or beings that were in the souls of people born, functioning and having different types, the basic ones being attack, defense or support. And then there were the Longinus gear, which were the same as normal sacred gear, but these had the ability to kill a god. Apart from that, unlike their sisters, that there were hundreds of thousands or millions of them, and that several were repeated, the Longinus were few. Apart from that, there could not be more than one in the same time and space, so for there to be another equal Longinus, the previous bearer of this one had to die. After creating them, the war ended with the death of the biblical God, who consumed all his strength to seal the being they called Trihexa, the beast of the apocalypse, or 666, the leaders of the demons, the four demon kings, had died at the hands of two dragons that were fighting, which God also sealed. Two boys and a girl could be seen in the backyard of what looked like a mansion. One had brown hair with amber eyes, the other also had brown hair, but darker, his eyes were gray. The girl was identical to both, having dark hair, but with amber eyes. "This is what you get for accusing me with Oka-san and Odo-san," said the brown-haired boy angrily, while kicking the other one who was lying on the floor. Sniff is Isaac Atado Kanyamoto," the darker brown-haired boy cried after being hit by the other. "Ugh, I'm already bored of you, useless," said Kanny, giving him one last stop and then leaving the place, followed by her brother, leaving her other brother crying in the fetal position. Years later. From that day on, the boy grew up, calling himself Issei Haidu, a 17-year-old teenager who went to the Kuo Academy. He was someone kind, honest and good-hearted, willing to help whoever needed it, but unfortunately his life was pure misery. His family didn't want him and only mistreated him, both psychologically and physically. Since he was little, in all the schools where he went, they never treated him as an equal or just another student. He was always the black sheep wherever he was, wherever he went, and wherever he went, his family made sure that would happen, being his younger brothers 1 year apart, who spread the rumor that he was a pervert, a complete useless and a nuisance, which was not true, but nobody wanted to hear that, since they spent their time worshipping as deities, his two younger brothers who according to everyone were perfect, the two incarnations of perfection. Although not everything was bad, since he managed to make some friends throughout his life, the bad thing is that not all of them could continue on the same path, and they ended up separating but still remained friends. He had stopped being human and became a reincarnated demon. He had been reincarnated by a teenager, a year older than him. Her name was Ria's Gremory, his mistress and love interest. She had reincarnated him after he was killed by a fallen angel, who pretended to be a human in love with him. After that, he joined the occult group of the Kuo Academy and the Gremory clan, being another servant of the demon family, having the four pawns inside him. Once he had known the supernatural world, he discovered that his two younger brothers were part of it, each having two pawn pieces. At the same time, he learned that both possessed sacred gear. His younger brother Isaac Haidu had the booster gear, which was a Longinus gear, and that it contained the Red Emperor, Drake the Red Dragon, Welsh Dragon, one of the three celestial dragons. While his sister, Kanny Haidu, had the absorption line, a sacred gear that had sealed the great dragon King Vritra. Here are all the parts of his soul. On the other hand, Issei possessed a Longinus-type sacred gear, which no one in the Gremory group knew about. None of its abilities were known, much less how powerful it was. Inside it was sealed the dragon Bombrus. In the words of Drade, Bombrus is a useless and weak dragon, who is reserved with other dragons and really lonely, since he was never seen with any other dragon or living being. He didn't even know why it was a sacred gear. Vritra remained silent at what the celestial dragon said, and preferred not to comment on Bombrus. While Bombrus was confused and surprised, it was the first time someone had awakened him, since all of his previous wearers never had any relationship or knowledge with the supernatural. His sacred gear manifested through a bracelet with a purple gem, which was on his left wrist. As much as Issei and Bombrus got along well, due to their calm and serene personalities, even the dragon showed itself to him and told him about its abilities. Flashback. Issei was walking through a cave. Walking a little further, he found a gigantic room. In its center there was a black and purple dragon, with claws between its wings, and with the scales located in such a way that it looked like armor. The most notable thing is that it was chained. "Wow, he has 4 hands," Issei said in a chibi and childish way, while a drop of sweat fell from Bombers in an anime style. "Seriously, I'm a gigantic dragon, and the first thing you notice is my 2 pairs of claws that I have on my wings," Bombers asked incredulously, looking at his carrier and friend. "Sorry, I couldn't help it," Issei apologized. "Well, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here. At least I'll be able to talk to someone face to face after a long time," said the dragon, lying down on the ground. "By the way, why is your sacred gear considered a longinus?" Issei asked curiously. "By the combination of the 3 skills I inherited from my parents, evolution, adaptation and copy," Bombers replied calmly. "Evolution, adaptability and copy. And what do they do?" Issei asked curiously. "The copy one, which I inherited from my mother, allows me to copy the abilities of other beings or objects, copy their auras or energies, techniques and other things. It's like the eyes of the man that Adam has in that anime, where gods and humans fight, or the Sharingan from the Naruto anime," Bombers responded calmly. "Great," Issei exclaimed surprised. "Then there is the evolution, which I inherited from my father. It allows me to become stronger over the course of battles or in training. Apart from that, it allows me to improve and evolve to another level. My other abilities are the ones I copied and my own body," Bombers continued speaking, smiling to see Issei's expression of surprise. "And last but not least, adaptability, which I also inherited from my father, allows me to adapt to any situation, improve my body, so that I can overcome any adversity or problem I find myself in, make myself immune to attacks that previously had an effect on me or harmed me. Apart from that, I can develop more skills to be able to handle situations better and adapt attacks or skills that previously harmed me," Bombers finished explaining, smiling at Issei's expression of surprise and admiration. "Wow, amazing, but why can't I use your abilities?" Issei asked, confused by that fact. "Why did the biblical god put magic seals so that my abilities could not be used?" the dragon replied. "I see, in fact it makes sense. You could have fallen into the wrong hands, and even if it was someone good who had you, the safest thing was that they would get drunk with power. But leaving that aside for now, did you manage to copy some things before being sealed?" Issei said somewhat thoughtfully. "Yes, I copied the skills of Drake and Albion, some of the Dragon Kings, and those of the biblical god and some other angel that was in the place where I was sealed," Bombers answered somewhat thoughtfully, trying to remember. "That sounds interesting," Issei said, surprised. "Yes, that's right, but I never used them, except 3 times, but I don't want to talk about it now. I'm tired and I want to sleep," said Bombers, settling into his seat. "Well, see you later, friend, rest," Issei said, smiling, and then got up. "Same here, friend," said Bombers, and then fell asleep. End of flashback. Since that day, Issei has tried to help Bombers break the seal, almost succeeding halfway, but without breaking it, so he left everything to Bombers. While his dragon companion broke the seal, he trained, practiced and created some techniques. He learned the use of the sword thanks to his entourage friend Kiba. Also worth mentioning is the fact that he fell in love with his entourage mates for who they were, after having participated in the attack on an abandoned church that was owned by some fallen angels, where they rescued his current new entourage partner, Asia Argento, with whom he also fell in love. But unfortunately all of them were blindly in love with her brother Isaac. With lies he managed to conquer them. Apart from that, he lied to them about Issei, saying that he was a pervert and interested, which only caused the rejection and disgust of his entourage companions. On the other hand, he related more with the other entourage that took care of the city of Kuo, the Citri entourage, where he met his best friend Saji, and got along well with the girls from his mistress's rival clan, who along with Saji, helped Issei with what he needed and prevented the other students from hitting him and the teachers from belittling him. Right now we are in the occult club. Issei along with his brother and sister were entering. When they entered the room they found a blonde-haired guy who was groping Ria's without any shame. "At least you have to be respectful," thought Bomber, seeing the scene through his companion in third person, something he was grateful to the biblical god for. "Who the hell are you?" Issei asked, seriously looking at the blonde-haired man angrily. "Don't disrespect me, low-class demon. I am Razor Phoenix, the heir of the Phoenix house and Ria's fiancé, so I can touch her as much as I want." The blonde responded with arrogance and a tone of superiority, which Issei and his brothers did not care about. "Leave her alone now, she's my girl," Isaac said angrily, approaching Razor menacingly. On the other hand, Riaz was surprised by Isaac's words, thinking that he loved her, which was not true, since the brunette only saw her as a piece of meat and not as she really was, the opposite of Issei, since Isaac saw every girl or woman who was interested in him as simple objects that he could do whatever he wanted. While Issei was different from him since he respected everyone and saw them equally, regardless of whether they were of a lower class than him or that they were different from the others, something that was not even shared by his sister Canny. More respect lower class, Riaz is my fiancé, so you can't get involved in this matter. Razor said annoyed, looking Isaac in the eyes. Isaac only got angry at what the blonde said, so with a crimson flash on his left arm, he materialized the boosted gear and was about to launch himself to hit Razor, but he would be stopped by a light that came from a remote part of the room. Everyone turned to look and saw a silver-haired girl, her eyes crimson, apart from that she was wearing a blue and white maid outfit. "Stop it right now, Razor-sama," the maid ordered, seriously, seeing that everyone was paying attention to her, including Isaac and his brothers. Razor clicked his tongue and walked away from Isaac, who looked at the silver-haired girl with a perverted look that was noticed by the same silver-haired girl and Issei. The two ignored her, deciding what was best for that moment. "Rafia One-sama, what are you doing here?" I asked, laughing in surprise. "The Mao Lucifer sent me to inform you that a rating game will be held to annul your engagement, as long as both sides agree." Grafia replied seriously. "Ani-sama did that?" I asked, laughing in surprise. "That's right, do you two accept the rating game?" Grafia asked the two high-class demons. "I accept," said Riaz, determined to break up her marriage. "I accept, although you should surrender, Riaz, since unlike you I already have my complete entourage, apart from that I have won rating game in the past, so I have more experience, and because you have the Red Emperor. It will not mean your victory," Razor responded, smiling arrogantly, and then snapped his fingers, and a golden magic circle appeared in the room from where a large group of girls who were Razor's entourage were summoned. After that, Razor stood in front and looked at Riaz with a challenging look. "Are you sure you don't want to give up?" Razor asked, smiling confidently. "Of course I won't give up," Riaz replied angrily. While that was happening, Issei's attention was caught by a blonde with blue eyes and two large drill-shaped pigtails. The girl also looked back at him, and for a second she could see two very blurry silhouettes behind the boy in front of her, something that confused her. "Well, you will have a full month, 30 days to prepare both sides for the rating game. After that, go each to your respective meeting points to be teleported to the arena where your fight will take place. With that said, I leave," Grafia said, and then made a teleportation magic circle and left the place. "Well, I'm leaving too, I have better things to do," Razor said before leaving the place with his entourage through a magic circle. After that, Riaz would let out Issei to speak. "I'm going to talk to Sona to ask for 5 weeks, so all of you can train," Riaz said before leaving the place through a magic circle. Several days later. Almost a week had passed since what happened at the occult club. Riaz and her entourage had gone to a house she had in the mountains, where everyone began to train, with Issei being the one who tried the hardest, managing to complete one of his techniques. Issei could be seen in the forest with a sword that his friend Kiba had given him. In the distance the sunlight could be seen, revealing that it was just dawning. Issei had woken up earlier to train before the others and be ready for his mistress's rating game. Issei would take the handle of his sword with his right hand, while the other held the sheath of the same. Closing his eyes, he would concentrate and continue in the same pose, then inhale air through his mouth. After that he would open his eyes and jump forward, and brandishing his sword, he would make a slash that would launch a wind wave that would cut 6 trees with a single cut. After that Issei would fall to the ground and spin on his axis, raising his sword to then make a horizontal cut from left to bottom to right, which caused another 6 trees to fall. After that, Issei took another breath and breathed in a different way, thus increasing his speed and strength, and then ran and jumped, turning forward, cutting the tops of 4 trees to create a wind fence. After all that, Issei would fall to the floor and hold on to a cut on his body, trying to reach his lungs. "Damn," Issei said, and then coughed up a little blood combined with saliva. "Mate, you better go back and rest a little, you're reaching your limit," said Bombers from the Chestnut's mind. "I can't, I have to continue, or else I'll just be a burden for Riaz-sama and the others," Issei said, getting up with the help of his sword and taking the handle of his sword with both hands, ready to continue training. At that, Bombers let out a sigh and then spoke. "Okay, I'll let you train a little more, but when I see that you can't continue, we'll come back, okay?" The dragon seriously asked his best friend. Hi, the brown-haired boy nodded before taking a breath and continuing to perfect his technique. Time after. Issei was returning to the cabin in the mountain of Riaz. Once there he would be greeted by the aforementioned, who looked at him seriously. "Where did you go?" Issei asked seriously to his pawn. "Good morning, Riaz-sama, I couldn't sleep, so I decided to train, so I could free her from her marriage," Issei said calmly and with a light smile. Strangely, Riaz was surprised by his words and felt her heartbeat slightly faster, feeling that way, loved and protected, which in itself confused her, since she was convinced that she was in love with Isaac and not Issei, but she would not deny that she felt better next to the older brown-haired boy. I'm glad you're doing this for me, but it's better that you don't overexert yourself, so have breakfast and go rest a little in your room, Ria said with a smile that made the brown-haired boy blush and nervous. Ah hi Ria-sama, said Issei blushing, entering the cabin. Once there he was greeted by his friend Kiba and looked at with disgust by the other girls, which made his heart ache, while his brothers just ignored him and went on with their thing. Weeks later. From that day on, everyone was training, where everyone managed to perfect themselves. Isaac and Canny managed to reach their balance breaker, but it only lasts an hour and a half. Meanwhile Issei managed to improve and finish his techniques, making 3 derivations of the breathing technique. On the other hand, Bombras along with Issei managed to break a part of the seal, thus releasing the ability adaptation. Which allowed Issei to advance and improve faster than the others, reaching a new phase of his sacred gear, still being the bracelet, but having some straps that formed a forearm glove and almost without fingers. Right now Issei was walking through the halls of his academy. He was going to the exit and then go to the occult club, but on the way he met his best, considered a brother from another mother, Saji Genshiro. Hey Issei, it's been a while, said Saji, bumping fists with the brown-haired boy. Same here buddy, how have you been doing while I was gone? Issei asked with a smile. Fine, although a little stressed by the rumors your brothers made about me, said Saji with a little anger. I'm really sorry, Issei said, and then let out a sigh of disappointment. What? He asked surprised and then took Issei by the shoulders. Issei, don't blame yourself for what your brothers do, it's not your fault, it's theirs. They decide to do this to the people they like the most and they want to see suffer, please, okay? Don't blame yourself and don't apologize for them, Saji said seriously and angry, although his anger was not directed at Issei, but at his brothers. Yes sorry, Issei apologized, lowering his head. At that Saji let out a sigh and tried to cheer up his friend. So how did your training go? Saji asked with a slight smile as Issei raised his head with a half smile. I've done well, and by the way, I've accessed a new state of my sacred gear, Issei responded and then summoned his divine gear in his left hand, revealing the small box made of straps. Wow, I'm still in phase 1, Saji raising his right hand, revealing that it was completely wrapped in bandages. The worst thing is that I still have to have my right hand sealed so as not to cause trouble, said Saji sadly in a comical way. You just have to try harder and you'll make it, friend, Issei reported, raising his fist to which Saji collided with his. Thanks for the words, Issei, Saji thanked with a smile. You're welcome, but I have to go now, Ria-sama and the others are waiting for me. Issei said and then took a breath and started walking. Hey, calm down, it's no use being nervous, or everything will be chaos, said Saji with amusement. Well, as someone once said, in chaos look for simplicity and in discord, harmony, and that's what I plan to do, so see you friend, Issei said with an amused smile, greeting Saji with his hand and then starting to leave. Yes, see you later. His phone rings when he answers the call. Hello Mito, did you accept Sona-sama's deal? Great, wait, you'll be back in a few days, Mito, after what you did to him, I doubt he wants to see you, he lets out a sigh. Okay, just don't do something stupid, Issei is not only my friend but also my brother, and just because you're my cousin doesn't mean I won't retaliate. Why am I like this? Well guess what, I've changed for that bastard of your uncle. After saying that Saji ended the call and let out a sigh of tiredness. The mother of this will be tiring, said Saji, and then began to leave. In the occult club. The entire group was there, without exceptions, already, plus Issei who carried another sword on Kiba's behalf. Kiba offered him swords with the water attribute, but Issei refused and assured his friend that he had something silver for this battle. Kiba trusted Issei, but he couldn't avoid the fact that he worried about the brown-haired boy. After all, he and Issei are not so different, both with bad pasts, although Kiba suffered more physically and emotionally. Nothing can compare to the mental suffering you have when the people you love call you useless and a hindrance, insulting you all the time, something that Kiba didn't want to continue happening to Issei. After all, why did the best person he knew have to suffer? Okay, is everyone ready? You asked your entourage, who nodded. At that, Riaz nodded happily and began to tell the plan. After that, a hologram of Graphia appeared in front of everyone. The time limit to prepare has ended. Everyone looks at the magic circle that will appear in front of them to be teleported to the dimension where the raiding game was taking place. When the silver-haired hologram finished speaking, a gigantic magic circle appeared on the floor, where the entire Gremory clan stood and then disappeared in a flash of light. Once the light faded, it showed the Gremory entourage in the occult club. They had been filled into a dimension that replicated the entire Kuo Academy. To the amazement of those who were not used to it, the raiding game definitely began. Ria's plan was to divide his entourage into different teams. Issei and Kaneko went to the academy gym, where they had problems with 3 pieces of the Phoenix entourage, a girl who dressed like a video game character and 2 lawless with chainsaws, something that reminded Issei of Friday the 13th. They eliminated her, but then others came. While they were busy with them, Kiba and Isaac took their place in the schoolyard, where they faced more pieces of razors, making it difficult for Kiba and Isaac to be able to counterattack, but they managed to emerge victorious when the reinforcement of Akeno and Kani who were doing air attacks. After that, and with most of Razor's pieces eliminated, everyone would gather together, but that would be their biggest mistake when Phoenix Queen appeared with Razor and eliminated most of them, then began to fight against those remaining, leaving currently on the battlefield only Razor, Issei, Riaz, Isaac and Asia, with Phoenix Queen eliminated after Kani's sacrifice. Issei was on the roof of the academy, behind him was Rissa with some scratches, and further back was Asia healing a badly wounded Isaac, who stupidly and quickly was almost eliminated by Razor, who was in front of the dark brown-haired man who looked at him seriously. "I don't understand why you keep getting up, you are only a low class. Well, I am the heir of the Phoenix family, I am without a doubt a high class, you have no chance against me," said Razor with an arrogant and confident smile. "The pawn of Ria's Gremory has been eliminated," Graphia's voice sounded. Issei and Riaz turned around and saw that Isaac couldn't hold on any longer and was eliminated. "You see, not even the Sekiryuite could against me, much less the Dark Dragon, you can't do anything," Razor said, smiling more and with evil to see how Issei lowers his head. It continued like that for a while. Razor was about to attack so that this would end. Riaz had already given up and was about to surrender as she began to cry, but they would stop when Issei spoke. "It doesn't matter that you are a high class, that's just a stupid title with no value whatsoever," he began to say, angering most of the high class devils who were watching the fight. For which no matter what he turns to look at Riaz with a smile and a determined look, and it would be that surprised her. "I will keep getting up again and again no matter what, just to protect you, so please don't give up, Riaz-san, and leave the fight to me," Issei asked with a hopeful and determined look. For a second, Riaz could see the silhouette of a silver-haired, blue-eyed boy standing next to Issei in the same pose, but it vanished when she blinked. She just looked at him and nodded before retreating further back to be healed by Asia. "Ha, and what do you think a lower class will do against an upper class? What? Are you going to ask me for mercy? Or are you going to beg me not to abuse my king? Ha, you are so pathetic," Razor said with pride and arrogance, showing a more narcissistic attitude. "Ha, if only you knew," Issei said, raising his left arm that had one of his swords so that his long Inus gear would begin to glow purple. Once the glow faded, it revealed 3 dark gray metal plates, one below the other on the forearm in the form of armor, some dark gray metal pieces around the bracelet gem and around the wrist, apart from a dark gray metal plate above the hand with the image of Bomris's face in purple, with also dark gray metal knuckles. Added to the fact that the finger straps extended almost reaching the first joints of the fingers. "Partner, I'm prepared, but due to God's seal, we can only use my adaptation skill about 2 times, and its passive effect is activated," Bomris explained in the chestnut's mind, who prepared to go all out. "That's enough for me," Issei responded with a mental link he had with Bomris. "Your sacred gear, did it evolve? Please don't make me laugh, what are you going to do? Cut me, hit me, I'm a Phoenix idiot, I'm an immortal being that can't be hurt by anything, and you're just a low-class devil, apart from being useless, your dragon is even more so for not possessing any ability or power, it is not even known why it is a sacred gear, I don't understand why you keep trying." After all, Razor said, but a scream from Issei would shut him up and draw everyone's attention. "Shut up, you damn bastard, Bomris is no useless, he was undoubtedly a powerful dragon for the biblical god to seal him, and a sacred, and besides, I don't care what you say to me, I will fight for the ones I love, and I will come out of here triumphant," Issei shouted, annoyed, and then crouched down a little and began to breathe in a different way. Full breathing, water breathing first stance, Issei thought before jumping forward with greater speed and strength than at the beginning. He would quickly reach Razor and try to carbonize him with a flame, but Issei would dodge it by jumping to the side, then jump towards Razor and cross their swords, from which water began to generate. After that, he would make a horizontal slash to the right and left with his swords, cutting off Razor's arms that he used to block the attack and part of his neck, causing him to bleed. Surface slash, Issei thought the name of his technique, but not satisfied with that, he brought his swords above him and then turned towards the front. Second stance. Water wheel, he thought before spinning at high speed and creating a water wheel that cut Razor diagonally in half. After that, Issei would kick Razor in the head to leave him unconscious, but at that moment, with an explosion, Razor would be engulfed in flames that covered Issei. "Adaptation," Bomris shouted from the gem of his sacred gear, adapting Issei's body to the Phoenix's fire, thus preventing its flames from causing any harm to them. Everyone was surprised to see how the high-class fire did not affect them, with the exception of their clothes, although they had some magic seals that strengthened them against fire attribute attacks. "That man," Razor exclaimed, coming out of the fire and hitting Issei in the abdomen, sending him flying through the air and causing him to drop the second sword that Kiba gave him, but he himself took out his wings and began to fly, then landing on the roof of one of the academy buildings. Ready Issei, you are immune to the Phoenix's fire, but it will still damage you with its blows and fire explosions due to the shockwave, so don't be overconfident in FOMO bombers in Issei's mind. I got it, leave it to me, Issei said determined and serious, the gem on his bracelet and his eyes would turn light blue and shine, while some of his strands of brown hair turned a much lighter brown. Bastard damn bastard, how dare you hurt me, I'm a Phoenix Razor said, but he would see how Issei jumped from the roof and once he landed on the ground he ran towards him at full speed while taking the handle of his sword firmly. Full breathing, lightning breathing, first stance. Lightning flashed the brown-haired man whispered before moving across the battlefield like a bolt of lightning, leaving behind a trail of electricity, which at the same time gave off electricity from his body. Passing by Razor, he would cut him in half, but leaning on a fork and turning, he would pass by again like lightning, cutting Razor again, doing it again until doing it about 5 times, after that he would stab the Phoenix with his sword and make him crash against the wall of a building. "The boss bastard," Razor said with difficulty, as he slowly began to regenerate. "So that's the Phoenix's weakness," Issei said dryly, making the blonde-haired man nervous. What are you talking about, you idiot?" Razor asked, annoyed, hiding his nervousness. Their regeneration that makes them immortal works through their magic reserves, meaning that, to generate themselves they consume magic, and the less of it they have, or depending on how many times they regenerated, their regeneration declines and becomes slower, and it will be like this until it becomes null. He summons a sword through a magic circle, and cuts off Razor's regenerated parts. "Give up, I don't want to waste any more time cutting you until you run out of strength," Issei ordered seriously looking at a dying Razor. "Fuck you, son of a." I didn't finish speaking when Issei cut him again, only leaving part of the piece in his neck up. "Give up now," Issei said more seriously and driving his sword deeper into Razor's torso who screamed in pain. "I refuse to accept my defeat," exclaimed the Phoenix causing Issei to cut off the parts that were almost finished regeneration, to which he would scream again in pain. "You are so stubborn," Issei said, about to decapitate him, but a voice would sound behind him. "Please stop hurting my one-sama," asked the girl that Issei had noticed a month ago in the occult club. Issei just turned to look at her. Razor was about to take advantage of her carelessness, but once again Issei would cost her the part she regenerated, causing her to scream in pain once again. "I'll stop hurting him when he gives up," Issei said seriously as his appearance returned to normal. "Please one-sama, give up," the blonde-haired girl asked, looking into her brother's eyes that only triggered her concern. Razor grew before this and tried to get rid of Issei, but he didn't succeed and he looked his sister in the eyes again, so letting out a sigh of defeat, he accepted his defeat. "I given up," said Razor, lowering his head. Razor Phoenix withdraws from the battle. The winner of this rating game is Ria's Gremory. Graphia's voice resounded in the place. After that everyone present would begin to disappear. "I did it," Issei said falling to his knees from exhaustion. "That's right, buddy, you did it, you've earned a well-deserved rest," Bombers responded happily. "Thanks Bomber," said Issei falling unconscious to the ground. Chapter 1. Explosion after explosion was what Issei heard, and all he saw was his own body lying on the floor with his back resting on a rock. Looking up you would see 2 armors fighting each other. The first was a black armor with dragon features and parts that shone almost red hot, apart from that it was surrounded by an evil aura that emitted various negative emotions, hatred, madness, revenge, despair, anger, etc. The other was a dark silver armor with blue details and a dragon helmet and tail. Along with them the armor had some dragon characteristics. Like the other it also emitted an aura, but from it emanated hope, kindness, goodness, bravery, justice, happiness, etc., all positive emotions. They fought to the death ignoring Issei, each with the same abilities that Issei recognized: boost, divine, evolution, adaptation, copy and more, but something about them was familiar to Issei, although he didn't know what. Issei shouted, although he didn't attract anyone's attention, except for Bombers, who woke up because of the alarm clock, which he turned off immediately. "Damn," said Issei sitting on his bed reflecting his left eye with his hand. "You should turn down the volume on that thing," Bomber said angrily in Issei's mind also waking up. "I know, but I can't, my grandfather did it and he didn't exactly teach how to lower the volume on this," Issei said with the alarm clock in his hand and putting it back on a table next to him. "Well whatever, it's good that Aya's woke up," mate said Bomber's happy with the result. "Woke up right, the rating game I won," Issei said and then quickly stood up. "Calm down," and answering, "That's right, buddy, you won, although according to what I heard, your brothers told your parents that they did all the work, so I recommend that you don't go down," Bomber said to his friend who lowered his head sadly. "Yes I understand," Issei said sadly and then sat on his bed. "Come on, buddy, don't be sad, get up and let's go out for a walk, it's not worth staying here, especially since we're about to break the seal of the biblical god even more," said Bombers to the chestnut animal. "Yes, you're right," they get up from their bed. You know, I'll go see Saji after my part-time job, said Issei before going to his closet, opening it and starting to take out some clothes. Okay, well you prepare, I will continue creating the balance breaker and see if I can finish breaking another part of the seal of the biblical god, said Bombers. By the way, what skill would follow? Issei asked curiously. My copy skill would follow, and then all the skills I copied, but we'll leave them aside and continue with my evolution skill, then we'll go with the skills, auras, magic, techniques and spells that I copied, Bombers responded calmly. Okay, let me know if you need help with anything, I declare. Issei finished. I will change. That's it, partner, we'll talk later, said Bombers before cutting off communication with Issei. After that, Issei took some more things and went down to the first floor of his house, without finding anyone, to which he assumed they went out to celebrate the victory of Isaac and Canny, which he was grateful for, since he did not want to hear how his parents branded him again as useless and a nuisance. He went to the kitchen and prepared his breakfast. After finishing and eating it, he returned to his room to pick up something, and then left his home, heading to his part-time job. Time after. Right now the brown-haired boy was leaving his job. He works for the simple fact that his parents did not give him any money to buy what he needed for school or his needs, so as a young man he had to earn his own money, helping neighbors or doing favors, only to later hide it since one time his brothers found his money and stole it. Accusing him of having stolen from their parents, which caused him not to have to eat for a few days, only having dinner at night when everyone went to sleep. Bored, he would take a wireless headset out of his jacket and put it in his right ear, then grab his phone and start listening to music. He would walk like this for a while, but as he turned a corner and saw his friend's store in the distance, he would receive a call from his friend. Issei, where are you? Come quickly to my mom's store, there's something important here, Saji exclaimed from the other side, but the whisper of a girl who sounded shy was heard. What's wrong, what's the emergency? Issei asked, excited by his friend's everything, ignoring the whisper. It's something you'd like to see, said Saji with a smile on the other end of the call, while someone tried to take the phone from him. Okay, I'm going there. Issei said, cutting the call and running to his friend's store. Arriving at it, I would open the door of the store, and the first thing I would see is Saji with an amused smile. Saji, what's the problem? Issei asked his friend. The truth points to Issei's right. The problem is that you and she haven't talked to each other for a long time, said Saji, and then left the place and went to another room. Issei, confused, would turn his head to the right, opening his eyes in surprise. Oh hi Issei-kun, said a beautiful black-haired girl, with pale skin, her hair covered her right eye, showing her left eyes that had central heterochromia, one below the other, the upper part pale blue, and the lower part green, also pale. You could see that she was shorter than Issei, who was 1.73 meters tall, while she was 14 centimeters shorter. Elizabeth, said Issei in shock, unable to believe who he had in front of him. It's been a long time since we last saw each other, said the girl known as Elizabeth, with a smile and a slight blush. Same here, Eli. Issei said before hugging her, causing her to blush and get nervous. At what Issei did, a dark matter similar to mist began to emerge from the girl's shadow, taking the form of blades or claws. An angry Elizabeth just stepped on her shadow with force, getting rid of the dark matter. Hey, what happened? Issei asked curiously, looking at Elizabeth, who got nervous again. Nah, nothing, my things, said Elizabeth, embarrassed. I really missed you, Issei said with a sweet smile that Elizabeth appreciated. Same here, Issei-kun, said the girl with a wonderful smile. Time after. Thanks for the help, Saji said to Issei, who was handing him a large box. Behind the brown-haired boy was Elizabeth, who was carrying a box as well. You're welcome, Issei said calmly and then went to another room, from where he brought another box. I say the same, and even more so since you are one of my friends, Saji-san. Elizabeth said politely, placing the box on the floor and then opening it to show several packages of sweets. But I'm serious, I'll let you take anything you want, Saji said, opening the box he had, showing several chocolates, which he began to put on a shelf. I want 25 chocolates, Issei answered, instantly receiving an elbow from Elizabeth. Sorry, I said 2, yes 2 chocolates, Issei corrected. The black-haired woman was about to hit him again, but before that she spoke again. For me and Eli-chan, Issei added with a triumphant smile, seeing his friend blush and become slightly shy. At that Saji laughed lightly, which was heard by Elizabeth. Imbecile, she said angrily, hitting them both. Sorry, I'll make it up to you, said Saji as he was hit by Elizabeth, admitting that she hit hard. Same here, Issei said, covering himself. Okay, 4 chocolates filled with dulce de leche, Elizabeth said, crossing her arms. What? But said Saji, but Elizabeth looked at him seriously. 8 chocolates, she said. What? But I can't, Saji exclaimed, upset. 10 chocolates, she said, irritated and even more serious. Okay, 4, just that, I'll give them to you, but they'll only be 4 chocolates, said Saji nervously and taking the aforementioned chocolates in his left hand. Okay, that's enough for me, said Elizabeth, snatching the chocolate candy from the blonde, who sighed with relief. And that's why you don't have to make a woman angry, mate, although it depends on the guy, but still never do it, said Bombers in the mind of the brunette who let out a sigh. I'll keep that in mind, friend, said Issei, and then finished putting some bottles in the refrigerator, feeling comfortable with the refreshing breeze. But at that moment he felt her tugging at his clothes, so turning his gaze he saw that Elizabeth was pulling him to get his attention. What's wrong? Issei asked, looking at his friend. It's getting late, it's time to go, Elizabeth said, pointing to the front window of the store, showing that it was starting to get dark. Hey, he exclaimed in surprise. How long have we been here? Issei asked, confused and amazed. A few hours ago, Saji-san's mother had already picked up her little children at the hospital and is coming to cover for Saji. Elizabeth replied calmly. Okay, I'm coming, Issei said, taking out a soda and then his wallet. Will you take one? I asked curiously. Yes, I was craving some sugar. Issei replied, going to the counter where Saji was cleaning. Sure, you can take it for free like he paid for it, said Saji looking at his friend. I want to be fair, I rarely get to take one of these, and if I'm going to do it I'll do it legally. Issei said with a smile. Haha, always just as fair, well it's 100 yen, said Saji. Issei just handed him the money and carried the soda by hand. See you at the academy, Issei said, heading for the exit. Likewise, we don't see Elizabeth-san, the blonde said goodbye. That's how it will be, Saji-san. Elizabeth said, following Issei. Walking through the streets of the city, Issei would be eating a chocolate, while with a small payment, Elizabeth would be drinking some of the brown-haired boy's soda. I'm glad you're back, how did it go in France? Issei asked his friend who smiled happily. Fantastic, to tell the truth, but it was difficult, It was starting from scratch, and even more so when I couldn't speak French freely, and I didn't have anyone with me, Elizabeth said, looking at the floor for a moment. And your relatives? Issei asked, looking away a little uncomfortable. Neither of my parents went with me, they spent time here in Kuo with my older sister, but hey, at least my uncles who lived in France were there with me, said Elizabeth, trying to avoid creating a depressed atmosphere. If that's already something, looks ahead seeing a luxurious house. Is this it? Issei asked, looking at the house. Yes, it's in my house, turns to Issei. Thanks for accompanying me, Issei-kun, Elizabeth thanked with a sweet smile. You're welcome, all for my best friend. He caresses her head and looks at her for a moment and then smiles slightly more. You must miss me. Issei said, touched by his friend's smile. I say the same, Elizabeth said calmly, approaching Issei. Issei saw this nervously, but decided to also approach, but before they both got closer, they heard something fall behind them. Both of them jumped in fright, turned around and saw how a white cat with golden eyes had knocked over a trash can and then ran away, but there was something that Elizabeth didn't notice, but Issei did, and that was that the cat had 2 tails. A Nekomata? Issei thought, surprised watching the cat disappear into the distance. Oh god, that was it, Elizabeth said while holding her chest where her heart was. Don't be evil-minded. Horrible, scary and unfortunate, am I forgetting something? Issei asked, amused. And on our part, pathetic, being almost adults and being scared by a cat, haha, said Elizabeth with amusement, so that they both laughed afterwards. Yeah, haha, yeah, well, whatever, he relaxes. It's time for me to go, see you tomorrow, at the park. Issei asked, tilting his head to one side. Do you have the same number? Elizabeth asked the brown-haired boy. No, I had to change it, he replied and then took out a paper that had his number on it. Here you have it, said Issei while the black-haired woman took it and then put it away. Well, then I'll call you or send you a message later, since my family is still moving, she said calmly. Don't you want help? Issei asked, looking at her with curiosity. No thanks, I can do it alone, The black-haired woman replied angrily, thinking that Issei was underestimating her. I know you can do it alone, after all I still remember that 2 years ago you broke the jaw of an idiot who wanted to be smart with me, Issei said, stroking the head of the girl who got nervous. Do you remember that? She asked, embarrassed, lowering her head so the brunette wouldn't see her blush. Of course, but anyway, I'll be waiting for your call, take care Eli-chan, Issei said as he began to walk. Likewise Ice-kun, Elizabeth said goodbye with her hand, which was also done by Issei. After that Elizabeth entered her house and would hear the voice of 2 adults congratulating a younger voice. Elizabeth did not give importance to that and went straight to her room, where she opened the door showing several unopened boxes, others already open, a bed and a closet. After that he closed the door and changing to a serious expression, he approached the window and saw directly his shadow, which was created by the moonlight entering through the window, a blue glow appeared where his left eye would be. But you know why did they try to attack my friend, she asked angrily. From her shadow a large amount of dark matter like mist emerged and began to mold and come together, giving rise to a knight, wrapped in armor as black as night, with shiny parts in light blue, with a tattered cape, with an ornament that looked like red hair, coming out of the back of his helmet. On behalf of all your warriors, my queen, I regret our disrespectful behavior towards your loved one. We believed she was being attacked. At that moment the shadow spoke, bowing to Elizabeth, demonstrating his total loyalty and respect for her. At that, the black-haired woman just let out a sigh and then spoke. I understand, Igris, but still, I can defend myself. I am capable of killing half a battalion with a small fraction of my power, by myself, and more than the two heirs of those demon families that have Kuo as their territory. They are so pathetic and weak that they need to reincarnate humans into demons, Elizabeth responded calmly, but the shadow before her spoke again. Sorry for speaking without your permission, but speaking of the subject of demons, I have detected that your friend Issei Haidu is a reincarnated demon. His demonic energy is comparable to that of Ria's Gremory, but his sources of energy and power barely surpass it. Igris informed his queen, who was frozen for a while. Issei-kun, he would never do it, it's impossible. The Issei I know would not abandon his humanity, no matter what. Apart from that, no demon would reincarnate any human, except those who have sacred gears. That means that Issei has one, and that in some way Issei is being manipulated by the Gremory, since you don't need to be a supernatural being to access it. Apart from that, in Issei I could feel that slight dragon sense that says that his sacred gear is a dragon type and that he's being dragonified. I don't know what the Gremory did or what she told him, but it doesn't matter. She turns to look at Igris seriously. Igris, send some yokai shadows to watch the two heiresses, have them go to Kuo Academy now, and when they see them, have them enter their shadows, Elizabeth ordered firmly. Igris nodded and then entered Elizabeth's shadow, from where 6 shadows of 2 ravens, 2 nine-tailed foxes and 2 spiders came out. Go now and let each of the 2 pairs come to give me information regularly. When I am alone, I reported, and the shadows came out through the small opening of the window to the outside, moving in the darkness without seeing any sights. After that, the black-haired girl approached the window and saw the moon becoming melancholic. Issei, you are my best friend, the only one who supported me and was there for me in the worst moments. My family, that's what you are. I know that if you find out this about me and what I'm doing now with your mistress, or what will surely happen in the future. Keep in mind that I won't care if you hate me or get angry with me. I will always be with you until the end, to give you back everything you've done for me, Elizabeth said, staying there looking at the moon, while remembering the best days she had with Issei. That same night with Issei. In the dimension of Issei's sacred gear that was connected to his mental space, he would be there with Bombers. In front of him several magic circles from which the chains that held Bombers came out, and several magic rings rotating around them. Right now the 2 of them were manipulating an emerald-colored magic circle, from which came out a chain of energy of the same color that wrapped around the dark dragon's neck. A little more, Issei, and we'll have it broken in 24 hours. He said as he carefully removed and broke 7 parts of the seal. Yes, remember to be careful. If we make a wrong move, a curse will jump and affect us, both Issei said in a cold sweat, while doing the same as Bombers. If I take that into account, the dragon reported, breaking another part of the seal. Time after. Well, with it would be done. Only 16 more hours of work are missing to break the seal. In 2 nights it would be completely broken, said Bombers lying down on the ground next to Issei. It depends on how many hours I sleep. I could sleep a little more. Even after meditation I can access this place, Issei added. Do you have free time? Bombers counterattacked what Issei said. No, he replied simply. So in 2 more nights the seal will be broken, said Bombers, relaxing again. Okay. He looks up, seeing the same clock that he has as an alarm clock. I have to wake up now, since my alarm clock is about to ring. See you later. Issei said before disappearing in a flash. Bombers stood there still until he realized something. Wait, how does he know his alarm clock will ring? Looks up, seeing Issei's clock, alarm clock. Son of a bee. Outside of Issei's mind space. Ahahaha, oh damn, I better get ready tonight before I go in with him, Issei said, writhing in his bed, but at that moment the alarm clock's own noise would ring in his head, leaving him dazed. Take that, idiot, said Bombers angrily in Issei's mind. Ah damn, okay, admit it, I deserved it, Issei said, getting up from his bed while holding his head. That and more, Bombers spoke again. Okay, but don't go overboard, okay? Said Issei somewhat nervously. Anyway, I'm going to go to sleep, later I'll start destroying the seal. See you later, said Bombers, while his voice was heard further away. If we see each other later, Issei said goodbye, and then Acer began his day. Time after. It was still early in the morning, and Issei could be seen talking to a Western escapee. He had the idea of learning a new style of fencing with some instructions that Kibble left him, apart from implementing it to his already swordsman combat style, a combination of two styles, Eastern and Western, added to the fact that he would modify it to apply it together with the breathing. He was like that for a while, apart from using the adaptation skill to be merciless as many times as he could use it, he also asked for training and meditated and returned to his mental space to continue breaking the seal. He was like this for a while until he decided to end it for the day, so he got up from the ground and left his training place, which was a sauna cleared of the forest, without realizing that a black mist-shaped matter was following him from a distance, out of his detection field. Once back at home he got ready to go to school and went down to have breakfast, where he saw his mother set the table, breakfast being eggs and bacon. He knew how to make it, but she looked at him angrily. "They are not useless to you," said the chestnut tree's mother angrily. But Oka-sen began to say Issei, but his father, who was looking at the newspaper, interrupted him. "You heard, go and prepare your breakfast if you want to eat," said the man angrily. Issei lowered his head sadly. "Okay," said the brown-haired boy heading to the kitchen. But without them realizing it, some strands of Issei's hair turned a much lighter brown, and his eyes turned yellow, but all of those features disappeared just as they came. Walking along the sidewalks of his city, Issei would be listening to music, but suddenly someone covered his eyes. "Who am I?" a voice behind him asked, sounding forced. "Elizabeth the dwarf." They hit him in the stomach. "I don't regret anything." They hit him again, but this time in the head. "Idiot," said the black-haired woman standing next to Issei. Who turned to see her and was more surprised. "What the hell, why are you wearing my academy student outfit?" Issei asked, surprised. Elizabeth was wearing the Kuo Academy summer shirt and skirt, with her jacket in hand. "My parents signed me up for it. They say they want their two daughters to be together all the time," Elizabeth said, crossing her arms. "Well, look on the bright side, we will be together," Issei said, smiling, which made the black-haired woman nervous. "So, which classroom are you in?" Elizabeth asked, silencing Issei. After a moment she started laughing. Hey, this is not funny," Issei said, blushing with embarrassment. "Oh yeah, but whatever." He grabs Issei by the sleeve and pulls him. "Come on, we're running late." "Haha," said Issei, being pulled by his friend. "Somewhere else." "This is bad," Saji said, pacing back and forth. "Sorry for not letting you know that I would be coming much earlier than expected," said a beautiful blonde girl with blue eyes, who was in front of Saji. He lets out a sigh. Whatever. He turns to face the blonde. "I just want you to do one thing, my friend, and that is not to get close to Issei," Saji said seriously. "I do what I want," said the now recognized myth angrily. "I'm not going to let you get close to him after using him like a filthy dog, so you could have a pathetic date with that bastard Isaac," Saji said, annoyed. "I know what I did, but that's in the past. Besides, just because you have 4 pawn pieces and I only have 2, doesn't make you more powerful than me," said Mito with a saw superiority. "Do you want to try?" said Saji, bringing his left hand to his right hand to remove the bandages he had. "Don't believe it, remember that I have the sunny gear," said Mito, summoning a large golden gauntlet with violet gems on his left arm. "Heh, you're just like that bastard Isaac," Saji said, leaving Mito motionless in his place. They were like that for a while. Saji as a precaution began to remove his bandages, but Mito dematerialized his sacred gear, then looked Saji in the eyes with anger, but sadness could be seen too, after all that he left the room, leaving the blonde-haired man alone. "Issei, I have to tell Issei about this," said Saji, taking his phone and began to dial, but at that moment a magic circle appeared on his right ear. "Saji, I need you to come to the occult club," Sona's voice said with its typical monotonous note. Shit, thought the Genshiren, knowing what was coming. "I don't know why, but I think something bad will happen," Bombras thought to himself. Now Issei was entering the occult club. Once there he met all his clanmates in the Citri clan, where he would greet everyone kindly, being ignored by almost all his classmates and only being greeted by Saji. He was also greeted by the Citri clan, of which a white-haired and black-haired girl almost identical to Sona stood out, but with something different. Which they called him with the suffix chan, which went unnoticed by everyone. "Sorry for the delay," Saji said as he entered the room. "Saji, what happened that you're late?" Sona asked calmly. "I had some problems with some students who were looking at the girls' locker rooms," the blonde-haired boy lied. "Okay, then tell me the names of those students," Sona said in the face of such events. "Okay, Sona-sama," said Saji, standing next to the black-haired girl. "Well, why did they call us Ryo-san Sona-sama?" Saji and Issei asked at the same time before everyone else. "They are here for the presentation of my new piece," Sona answered monotonously. Aside to talk about a separate topic, the black-haired girl finished speaking, giving her a look which she did the same, which surprised Issei and Saji, except for those who have been in their respective clans for a long time. "Okay, so Sona, what's your new piece?" she asked, sitting in her chair that had a desk in front of it with some papers that she continued signing. "Oh, do you remember the list of those I recommended to you?" Sona asked with a cheerful smile and adjusting her glasses. "Yes, I remember them, since I saw that you were missing strong pieces, so to help you with it I'll give you a list of some suitable candidates for you. What's up with that? Did you find any that interested you?" she asked curiously. "Well, one of them seemed to have power, but I was very surprised because I underestimated it," Sona said with elegance and seriousness. And who is it?" I asked, laughing somewhat uncomfortably. "Oh, it's not a big deal, just the bearer of the Sunny Gear, which has sealed the Sun Dragon Sunny, one of the 3 celestial dragons, and therefore the most powerful," said Sona with a proud smile, leaving several in shock, and more so Bombers who was listening. Why among so many places, you had to be here? Do you hate me that much, biblical god?" Bombers asked desperately and dramatically. "What?" several exclaimed, but the voice that stood out above all was Ria's. "You can pass Genshiro Mito," said Sona. At that precise moment, Issei's world stopped, he went into shock and couldn't believe what he had heard, he just wondered and told himself that it was just a bad dream, but the reality was different. After what Sona said, Mito entered the room and began to search with her eyes until she found the person she was looking for. Issei with his gaze on the ground, lifted it and looked Mito directly in the eyes. The blue-eyed girl could see how Issei's eyes stopped from their beautiful silver color to an intense golden one that shone, and several strands of her hair turned white. That scared her for some reason, so she decided not to do what she had planned. While that was happening, Issei's appearance returned to normal. Well, he looked at me as he took a few steps nervously, which everyone thought was because of shyness, but the reality was that he was afraid of Issei. After all, it's not the first time he's seen those golden eyes. Chapter 2. I love you, Mito Genshiro. And I love you, Issei Haidu. Why are you dating him? It's a dare from his sister. If I pretend to love him, she'll give me a date with Isaac in return. After all, I'm nothing to you, right? Issei. Answer. The pale brown-haired boy, almost white and with yellow golden eyes, was holding Mito by the neck, lifting her into the air and preventing her from breathing. She could only look at him with horror and fear, while the boy only looked at her with hatred, anger, disappointment, and sadness. Myth. The blonde-haired girl was brought out of her thoughts and returned to reality. Her king piece was in front of her, checking to make sure she didn't have anything. Are you okay, Mito-san? Sona asked, analyzing her double pawn piece. Why yes, I'm fine, Mito replied with some nervousness. I'm after. What? She came back. Elizabeth asked incredulously. She and Issei were inside one of the abandoned buildings of the Kuo Academy. Yes, damn it, he sits on a small stage. Damn it, no I don't know what to do, Issei said, holding his head in stress. Hey, relax, Elizabeth said, putting her hand on the chestnut-haired man's shoulder. Everything will be fine, you just have to ignore her. Yes, I think you're right, Issei said as he began to relax. I'm always right, Elizabeth said with a proud smile, giving Issei a small pat on the back. But as he did that, a dark mist came out of his hand and entered Issei's shadow. The brown-haired boy didn't notice that, and neither did Bombers, who was sleeping after staying awake for a long time to destroy the seal of the biblical god. Days after. A few days passed since Mito's arrival at Kuo Academy. Issei just ignored her all the time. Elizabeth pushed her away to be with Issei, since Mito wanted to talk to Issei alone, which did not work due to the fact that her cousin Saji, Elizabeth and one of her entourage companions Momo Hanakai, who was one of Sona's bishops, apart from that although it was not confirmed. She also believes that she spends time with her queen Tsubaki Shinra. While that was happening, Issei and Elizabeth continued with their thing. Elizabeth had been happily accepted by everyone in the academy, but that didn't last long when they saw her hanging out with Issei. Some told her the aforementioned rumors about the brown-haired boy that seemed childish to her. They also began to say that Issei was blackmailing her or manipulating her with something. Which led to threats and attacks on the brown-haired boy, which only ended in the next day the students who tried or did something to Issei ending up with broken bones, and everyone saying that some dark knights with neon blue eyes did that to him. Aside from that, several boys looked at her with lust, something that seemed quite hypocritical to Elizabeth, who only gave her a hit on the Sona name of the boys who tried to get close to her. The only ones she let get close to her were Issei and Saji, which worsened her image. But she didn't care, and in no time the jokes and threats to her person began from most of the girls in her academy and some boys. She also heard certain rumors about her. Upon hearing that only one name came to her head, Kani Haidu, it was not a mystery to those who knew her that both girls were like water and oil. Neither could stand the other, Kani because Elizabeth helped and spent time with her useless brother, and Elizabeth couldn't stand her for the simple fact of her narcissistic, arrogant and discriminatory personality, which thought she was above everyone, and more so now that she was a half-demon and half-dragon. whose point of view of humans became dark and she only saw them as simple cockroaches with which she could entertain herself for a while and then throw them away. Unfortunately, that was the same pot as Isaac. Even the black-haired girl would not be surprised if they saw her parents that way. Right now Riaz and Sona could be seen alone in the occult club. Both were playing chess, but Sona looked serious. "Riaz, why does your entire entourage treat Issei like that?" Sona asked, suddenly surprising the red-haired girl. She asked her since she saw how the brown-haired boy gave gifts to the girls of the Gremory clan or told them some compliments, but all of it was instantly rejected by them. "What do you mean, Sona-chan?" I asked, confused. "I mean, why do you reject him like that?" "I mean, since he has tried so hard for you and is only looking to help you all," Sona responded seriously. She had noticed for a long time the treatment of the females of the Gremory entourage to Issei. She did not say anything because she thought that by getting to know him better, they would stop believing in those stupid rumors. But she didn't even know where they came from, but it seems that her thinking was not correct. The reason is that I only have it for its sacred gear, and knowing that this dragon has that strange ability adaptation, which makes it immune to the attacks it receives, now it can be useful to me in the raiding game." Riaz answered with absolute disinterest. What?" she exclaimed, surprised. "You laugh, how can you say that? Issei loves you and the others," said Sona, angry with the red-haired girl. "And what? I would never fall in love with someone like him, a useless and perverted lower class. Besides, my heart already belongs to Isaac. Besides, if he stops being useful to me, I will only have to remove the pawn pieces that he has." Riaz answered calmly. "I hope you don't regret this laugh," Sona said, putting the Tama aside and continuing with what she and the Redeed were doing. Somewhere else. Elizabeth had her eyes closed, resting her head on Issei's shoulder, who was sleeping, while she, through one of her shadows, listened and saw what both heiresses were doing. "Well, now I know who to trust and who not to. Sona Shitori, or better known as Sona Sitri, I hope you continue on the right path." Opens his left eye, showing that it was neon blue and that it was shining. "Or else I will have to finish off Taigo," said Elizabeth, while creating a blade of darkness in her right hand. "You should calm down, girl," said a deep, authoritative male voice, which resonated in Elizabeth's mind. "And why would Ashbourne do that?" Gun Elizabeth, annoyed. "The time only causes you to do reckless things, and if you attack the Gremory heiress, it will only cause you more time. You are not yet at a sufficient level to defeat the current Lucifer, much less an entire army of demons at his service," responded the voice known as Ashbourne. "Okay, maybe you're right, but still, I'm not going to let her get away with this," said Elizabeth determinedly, undoing the knife of darkness and returning her eye to normal. "All in good time, my friend," said Ashbourne, and then cut off communication with Elizabeth. After that, Elizabeth let out a sigh and woke up Issei before the back-to-school bell rang. Time after. Issei was walking through the streets of the city. It was night. Riaz had sent him to kill some renegade demons that were in the area. He was wearing a black sweatshirt, along with a mask that slightly simulated the face of a dragon, along with dark blue pants and common black sneakers with white strings and soles. Quite suspicious, but even if a person went into abandoned buildings or the darkest alleys, it was suspicious. At least with those clothes he could hide his identity. The stupid rumors about the academy, which spread to the parents of the students and from them to the neighbors and so on, were enough for him. The brown-haired boy was walking and in his own world, but in the distance he heard a scream of some children, so getting serious he ran out where he heard the scream, arriving soon at the entrance of a building. He didn't think about it and entered it. Running down a hallway he managed to detect a source of demonic magic, surely a renegade, so kicking open a door he entered and saw something that horrified him. Several human corpses and a renegade in the middle, who was holding some children in his hands, plus in front of him some adults who were unconscious. Damn, a berserker guy, Issei thought seriously, but he saw how the renegade demon was about to eat the children, so acting quickly, he concentrated his mana in his hand, mind and heart. "Hey idiot, mess with someone your own size," the brown-haired boy blasphemed, drawing the attention of the renegade who turned to look at him. "Birth of the pair of swords," the brown-haired boy exclaimed, and energy began to come out of his hands which took shape. After that he crossed his arms in an X where two swords were created, one katana and the other with a western theme. Katana. Western sword. Both were demonic and were the creation of the Sacred Gear's ability. Swords birth the Sacred Gear of Udo Kiba, after having broken the part of the seal of the biblical god that blocked the ability of copy of Bombers a few days ago. Issei copied the ability of Kiba's Sacred Gear and copied Drake's again, along with Ritra's, Akeno's lightning magic. Ria's destruction magic and Asia's Sacred Gear ability, along with a strange energy that Kaneko had, which according to Bomber's chakra, although the abilities were magnified in different ways in the brown-haired man's body, like the ability of Kiba's Sacred Gear, which instead of creating the swords directly, created them from the magic in the form of energy that Issei releases from his body. Returning to the battle that had just begun, when Issei realized it, the demon was already in front of him with his right arm raised, ready to deliver a powerful right hook. At this, Issei used his two swords as a shield and was thrown into crashing into a wall where he broke some bones. Damn, Issei said in pain, materializing his sacred gear in his left arm. Adaptation, said Bombers from the gem of his sacred gear. After that, Issei's body began to regenerate. Okay, let's be serious, Issei said, getting up in pain and then taking a combat pose and launching himself against the berserker. Enhancing his body with magic would improve his strength and speed, barely dodging another attack from the renegade and then trying to cut off his arm, but his skin was so tough that it only made a small scratch. Damn, well, it was obvious dodges another attack. How the hell does he move at that speed? Comparing it to the size and weight of his body, this is unrealistic, Issei thought, blocking an attack with his swords to fly through the air, but the brown-haired boy would take advantage of that. Full breathing, water breathing. Second stance. Water wheel, Issei whispered, spinning and creating a water wheel, with which he managed to cut off the renegade's left arm. But after that, the renegade demon hit him, throwing him into a wall. Okay, this, said the brown-haired boy, but the berserker appeared in front of him, now being a crimson-red color. He was about to get hit, but Issei rolled to the right, evading the blow that left a small crater on the floor. Issei has already accumulated several boosts, get ready because I'm going to transfer them to you, said Bombers from the gem. After that, a crimson aura enveloped Issei and was absorbed by his body. The brown-haired boy felt stronger and much lighter, but he didn't have much time to admire his current power when he jumped to a great height, evading the berserker's attack. Well, let's end this. 10th modified stance. The dragons of change, Issei said. Water began to form from his swords that took the form of two oriental dragons. After that, it began to fall and would start spinning in the air. With only one goal, and that was the decapitation of the berserker-class rogue demon that stood before him. You should have called reinforcements, Saji said to Issei. Both were in the abandoned building. Next to them were Kiba and Tsubaki, the Citri Queen, who had been sent to modify the memories of the human people in the area, Ivan to send a Keno, but she refused, Riaz too, Sona was busy, and no one else had enough knowledge or experience to do the memory modification spell. Although Momo and Mito also went so that there would be more reinforcements. I couldn't, I had to both defend myself and attack the berserker, apart from protecting those who were still alive, Issei said, tiredly sitting on the floor, his wound slowly regenerating as he breathed heavily. He was still wearing the clothes he uses to hunt renegades, but now he didn't have the mask. Issei's new appearance. How do you regenerate like that? Momo asked, approaching the blonde brown-haired duo. With the magic of friendship, Issei replied, causing Momo to look at him with a poker face that made him nervous. Okay, it's because of Bombers' ability adaptation. As you know, it makes me immune to things that hurt me before, but it also grants me abilities according to what I need at that moment. The renegade demon seriously injured me, and I wanted to regenerate and needed to regenerate to survive, so the adaptability ability created a regeneration ability or a healing factor, Issei said, giving a better answer that surprised everyone. That's it, said Saji, but someone else got there first. Incredible, very amazing to tell the truth, Tsubaki said, amazed by what Issei had said. I mean, you can create abilities at will? Momo asked. Yes and no, as long as it is something that benefits me, the adaptation ability will create an ability or grant me the ability to be immune, to face the adversities or problems that I am in. For example, if I fall off a cliff and I have no way to save myself, the adaptation ability will give me the ability to fly. If I get sick, the ability will make me immune to the virus. If I am poisoned, I will become immune to the poison. If I am attacked with electricity, light magic, the magic of the destruction of the grimoire, etc., I will become immune to them. Do you understand? Issei asked with an amused smile to see his surprised friends. Damn, your ability is broken. Mine only cancels the magic and abilities of the people I have contact with, and apart from that I can only have complete control when it is in its final phase. I'm just on the second one, said Saji, somewhat depressed. And realize, you could cancel my magic and abilities, leaving me only with my sword techniques and basic physical abilities, Issei said, being right about that. Saji's ability was already in danger, and even more so if he entered seriously, he could finish off his enemies very easily. If you're right about that, said Saji with his spirits back. Whatever, he gets up and puts on his mask. We have to continue patrolling the streets so that future generations have a future, said Issei, starting to walk towards the exit, being followed by the others. Where have I heard that phrase more than once, thought everyone who followed Issei. The next day. Issei would be arriving at the academy early today, but when he was once inside he received a call from his king, saying that he would appear at the occult club, where he went there, and once he arrived he entered, being welcomed by everyone in the place, along with the Citri entourage. Most of them greeted him, so he could ask questions later. Why did you call us all here? Sona saw Maria Sansaji and Issei asked in unison. Decide which entourage will go to the forest of relatives to get a familiar for those who do not yet have one, Sona responded seriously. What is a familiar? Asked Canny confused and curious, which was the same for Isaac. And what is the forest of the familiars? Isaac asked. The forest of familiars is an easy way to obtain a familiar, it can only be accessed on full moon nights. Familiars are magical monsters, magical beasts or supernatural beings with which a contract can be made, thus forming the master and servant pact. Familiars have different abilities depending on the type, some are to obtain information, others for hunting. Or some help their masters in combat by attacking or defending, others even give support, healing or giving positive effects to their masters and allies. Issei responded simply, knowing that Ria's and Sona's explanation would be very complex to what the two Haidu twin brothers would not understand. Exactly what Issei said, Ria said looking at them with a smile. Well, with that explained, now we will decide which of the two entourages will go in 3 days, Sona said seriously putting her hands on her waist. Wouldn't it be better for both of us to go, instead of competing for it? Issei said, already knowing the rivalry between the two childhood friends. No, both heiresses said in unison. Why do I feel like I'm going to have a bad time, thought several of those present at the place. Days after. Well, we arrived, said Riaz, along with her entourage, all of whom had appeared through a magic circle. Is this where it is? Isaac asked the red-haired girl, who nodded. That's right, the Grimoire replied with a smile and her hands on her waist. At that moment someone jumps from the top of a branch and falls in front of them. Issei was about to materialize some swords as well as Kiba. The two Haidu brothers were surprised and were about to materialize their sacred gear, but the red-haired girl got ahead of them all. Hello familiar masters Oji, I am Ria's Grimoire, the heiress of the Grimoire demon clan, which is part of the 72 demon pillars. I am here to obtain some familiars for my new servants. Ria said her introduction since she had come to that place. The pleasure Grimoire heiress, I see that you already know me, but let's leave that aside, come follow me, I will get you some familiars for your servants. He turns to look at all the pieces of Ria's present. Who of all of you are the new ones? And do you have any preference? Zatoji asked. At that Issei, Isaac, Canny and Asia stepped forward. I want a strong one, said Isaac. I am a powerful one, said Canny. The truth is I haven't decided yet, Asia said, embarrassed. I don't have any, let's see what happens, Issei said calmly. Okay, follow me, Zatoji said, leading the Grimoire entourage. They were like that for a while. Aya had obtained her familiar, which turned out to be a small blue dragon, belonging to the sprite dragon race. That Isaac approached him but the dragon itself electrocuted him. Everyone was worried about him except Kiba and Zatoji, but as time went by everyone calmed down. Now you could read how Issei was walking through the forest alone after he asked his king and master Pak familiar to go on his own. Well, we are already far from your companions and the ruined Ash Ketchum, said Bombers in Issei's mind. Yes, how many boosts did you accumulate? Issei asked. I'm going for 47, answered Bombers. Okay, give me 7 please, said Issei. After that a crimson aura enveloped his body and he was absorbed by it. There you have it, said Bombers, thus friend. Thanks, by the way, why don't you let me tell them about your copy and evolution ability, plus the abilities I already copied? Issei asked curiously, bleeding to the branch of a tree and then jumping from one branch to the other. I'm not saying you shouldn't tell them, I'm saying you should keep it to yourself until my evolution ability is freed from the seal of the biblical god, apart from the fact that they assumed that I only had one ability and no more, so it's partly their fault for not asking, Bombers responded calmly. Okay, you have no point, Issei said, increasing his speed and looking at his family from the top of the trees. But at that moment he saw a kind of black dog with 6 completely white eyes, being followed by a pack of wolves with black fur and the symbol of a crescent moon on their heads. Issei only saw that and by instinct he jumped to help the animal. Bombers transfer me 14 boost F, Issei said, then he would fall to the floor just at the moment that a very dense crimson aura enveloped him and was absorbed by his body. Chaotic sword birth, Issei said, hitting the ground with his fist. After that large swords began to emerge from it in an uncontrolled manner, piercing and killing the wolves instantly. After that he stood up normally and turned around, but something hit him, throwing him to the floor. When he looked up he saw that strange dog. Who was licking his face with happiness. Hey, calm down, Issei said trying to get him away from him. It seems you already have a companion familiar, the mutt seems to want you for saving him, Bomber said in Issei's mind with amusement. Okay, but I don't think he knows what it means to be a familiar. He takes the dog away from him, picking it up. Just look at it, it looks like just a puppy. Issei said, looking at the dog in his hands that seemed like the most innocent being in the world, obviously ignoring the fangs and the messy tips of its fur. I don't know, he seems more submissive than a puppy, said Bombers doubtfully. Who knows, maybe it's both, Issei said, standing up and carrying him as if he were a baby. Do you want to come with me? Issei asked him. Woof, the dog said in affirmation. Okay, he looks at him carefully. Do you have a name? Issei asked the dog as if he understood him and shook his head. Huh? Who would have thought what was shown in Like Cats and Dogs is becoming reality, said Bombers. Issei would shake his head while laughing a little. Well, since you don't have a name, I'll give you one, let's think a bit and then snap your fingers. Rover, what do you think? Issei asked with a smile. Wow, licks Issei with joy. It seems you like it, said Issei happily. After all this, Issei began to walk in search of his entourage and mistress, but he only ended up getting lost. After a while it started to rain, so he had to take shelter in a cave. Damn it, Issei said while drying his clothes. While Ladra Rover started to go deeper into the cave. No wait, Rover said. Issei began to follow him. The chestnut lost sight of the dog, and when he found him, he was in front of a gigantic blue western dragon with light blue scales. Rover, come here, Issei said in a whisper, motioning for the monster dog to come to him. You know that dragons have better hearing than dogs, right? Asked Bomber, seeing how the dragon in front of the chestnut began to move, and in a short time he was already awake. Who's there, said the now identified dragon, as her voice was that of an adult woman. Wow, Ladra River innocently. Wow, I imitate Issei, hoping that they won't attack him. You know, kid, this isn't the first time this has happened, but at least the previous ones tried harder, said the dragon with a poker face. I know, but it's not like I have anything less. By the way, look over there, the Red Emperor said, Issei pointing behind the dragon, who turned around with a look of hatred. Issei took advantage of that and took River and started running, but he would be thrown to the ground by the dragon's tail, who took him with her tail and pulled him to her. Damn, I believed her, but whatever. She looks at Issei seriously. What are you doing here? The dragon asked seriously. I got lost and then I got in here, Issei answered honestly. That was looked at by the dragon. Okay, I believe you. I know when someone is lying to me and I see honesty in you, but anyway, what is your name? Asked the curious glutton. My name is Issei Haidu, demon reincarnated by Ria's Gremory, bearer of Bombers, Issei responded calmly, surprising the dragon. Bombers? A black and purple dragon, with armor like scales and four hands. The dragoness asked, surprised and incredulous. At that moment Bombers' gem appears on Issei's wrist. Damn, what is it with my upper claws, is that the only thing they recognize me for? What? Bombers asked angrily, confirming what Issei said. Bombers, how long has it been, said the dragon, surprised. Do I know you? Sorry, but I've seen many dragons with the same colors as you and almost all of them are of the same species, so I can't tell who's who, said Bombers without recognizing her. Idiot, it's me, Tiamat, said the one now recognized as Tiamat angrily. Tiamat, the dragon of karma and chaos. One of the 5 dragon kings, the most powerful of all in the history of the universe. The dragon that surpasses the red and white emperors equally, and that does not have the title of celestial dragon because she settled for that of dragon king. Bombers asked calmly. If that's the same one, perhaps you know another Tiamat, said the offended dragon. My mother is called Tiamat, and already, I know that you are not my mother, answered Bombers. If I am the dragon queen Tiamat, she said, making it clear who she is. Okay, how are you? Bombers asked. Well, and you? Tiamat asked the sealed dragon. So much fuss for this? Issei thought with a poker face. Good, although boring, Bombers replied. Hey, I put a console with several games in there, Issei said to the gem where Bombers was. Right, I forget about that, said Bombers, turning his gaze inside his sacred gear and seeing several games with a console in the middle and a television. Anyway, what brings you here? Tiamat asked curiously. We're here for you to get a familiar, responded Issei. So a familiar, Ha looks at Rover. No offense, but he seems more like a pet than a familiar aspiring to be a servant, said Tiamat doubtfully. I know, but it's not like he's looking for something powerful. There's also the fact that I saved him from a pack of wolves, and he wanted to be with me. Issei replied with a shrug. Tiamat watched them for a moment and remembered something. What if I am your familiar? Tiamat asked. Hey? And why is that? Issei asked, surprised. I owe Bombers one, and this way I am free of that favor, Tiamat replied honestly. There are 2, counting the fact of our fight, Bombers added. What? You 2 got into a fight? Issei asked, confused. We did, but I started. I guess you already know that, but I'm still telling you, Bombers was someone really lonely, and he didn't talk to any dragon. Out of curiosity, along with Tannen and Fafnir, we faced Bombers, forcing him, Tiamat replied. And what happened? Issei asked curiously. I kicked the 3 of them's asses and took their treasures and territories, but not Tiamat's treasure, since that same day Drake destroyed it, but I still have their territories and other treasures, Bombers replied. And a few days later it was sealed by the biblical god, Tiamat added. It was Vritra and Sunny's fault, said Bombras. And what did he and the third celestial dragon do? Issei asked. They came to confront me, we fought, they attacked my younger sister who was visiting, I almost killed Sunny and left Vritra half dead, but because our fight was in the human world, we caught the attention of the biblical god, so he went to where we were and managed to seal Sunny and Vritra. Then he tried it with me, but I refused, and since I was in a mode that I call Berserker, I didn't have much control of myself, so I tried to kill him, copying much of his abilities, his spells and magic. I practically almost killed him. I ripped off both of his legs separately and an arm, but I don't know how and when, but he only managed to seal me, answered Bombras. Wow, you are strong, Issei said, surprised. I am a thing but a barbarian, said Bombras with pride. Well, I think we have to go now, Issei said at the entrance of the cave, seeing that it had stopped raining. And how do you accept? Asked Tiamat. What do you mean you're my familiar? Issei asked. That's right, Tiamat replied. Issei thought about it for a moment and let out a sigh. Okay, let's do it, said Issei. Okay, said the dragon, and a magic circle appeared in front of her. Time after. Tiamat could be seen hiding in her cave. Issei had already left several hours before, and the dragon was meditating a bit. It seems that Bombras didn't tell him what happens when a male dragon beats a female, and that dragon bearers take everything that belonged to their dragons. It will be fun to see his face when he finds out that he and I are engaged, thought Tiamat amused. Chapter 3. A few days had passed since the Grimoire entourage went to the familiar forest. Rover stayed living with Issei, turning out to have several abilities such as shrinking and camouflaging, the latter making him practically invisible to the visit of others, and hiding his aura and eliminating his scent. Although Bombras said that he could feel that he had two others, but neither of the two knew which ones, since the monster dog did not show them. From time to time he would go and visit Tiamat in her territory, avoiding running into Zatoji, or vice versa, where the dragon in a smaller form the size of a small dog would visit him. The only ones who didn't get a familiar were Isaac and Canny, making the excuse that none of them were at their level. Now Issei would be arriving at the academy early today, but when he was once inside he received a call from his king, saying that he would appear at the occult club, where he went there, and once he arrived he entered, being welcomed by everyone in the place, along with the Citri entourage. And two girls, a blue-haired girl with a green streak and amber eyes and an orange-haired girl with violet eyes. Here came Ria-san, why did you call me? Issei asked curiously, but having a bad feeling with the two girls who were there. I needed them all gathered here, since two envoys from the church have come here, said the red-haired woman, referring to the two girls that Issei did not know. It's been a long time since we last saw each other, Issei-kun. The orange-haired woman said with a smile. Wait, whispered the brown-haired man who analyzed the orange-haired girl better until she opened her eyes in surprise. Irina Shidu, said Issei, surprised. Flashbang. Why are you doing this to me, Irina-chan? Said a 10-year-old Issei to an Irina of the same age, but who was dressed like a boy. Why, you are nothing to me, Issei-kun. I would never care about someone like you, and much less our friendship. I only became your friend to be dry of me, dear Isaac-kun, said the orange-haired girl with contempt towards the brown-haired boy who would not stop crying. But Issei said, but at that moment Irina kicked him, knocking him to the floor. But nothing, you and I are no longer friends, after all I already achieved what I wanted, and that was for Isaac-kun to become my best friend, Irina said happily at the end. After that she turned around and left the place, leaving an Issei who was crying inconsolably. But at that moment a black-haired girl with a lock of hair covering her right eye and only showing her left eye, which was light blue and green, approached Issei as she was worried about the boy who was crying, even though she didn't know him at all. End of flashbang. Sorry, no offense, but you can talk later. Now we would like to know, why are there two church messengers in demonic territory? Sona asked seriously. 4 fragments of the true Excalibur were stolen from the church by a renegade exorcist named Freed, and his trail ends in the city, the blue-haired girl answered seriously. So what you want is a free pass on our territory? I ask you seriously. No, we just don't want them to get in our way or interfere with our mission. If possible, we want them to do nothing, Irina said seriously. I'm sure that was arrogance, Bombras thought with a drop of an I'm-style sweat. After all, it's not every day you ask a clan heiress for something like that and in that way. Sona and Riaz looked at each other and approached each other, whispering something that no one heard. After that they returned to the exorcists. Okay, we won't do anything about it, we leave it all to you, but if it gets out of control we will intervene in the matter, but in exchange we want more information on the current status of your mission, said Riaz seriously and in an authoritative tone. The blue-haired girl let out a sigh of annoyance and spoke. It is known that the renegade exorcist is allied with an ex-Father Valper and a cable of Grigori called Cacabiel. They stole 4 of the 6 pieces we had of true Excalibur. She thinks a bit, remaining silent for a few moments. And that is all the information we have, or that we are allowed to say, the blue-haired woman responded seriously. Kiba, upon hearing that, looked at the blue-haired woman seriously. Issei, seeing this, approached his friend and put his hand on his shoulder to get his attention. "I'm fine, Issei, don't worry," Kiba said with a smile. "Everyone says that, hiding behind a fake smile, but please Kiba, don't do anything," Issei said pleadingly. "Issei, I can't do that, those swords," Kiba said, but Issei interrupted him. "The swords are not to blame, they have no conscience to have done that to your friends. I'm not saying you shouldn't seek revenge, even if they say it's bad, there are times when it's good, so we can be at peace with ourselves and allow the innocent dead to rest in peace, but please Kiba, don't let your hatred and anger affect you. Don't let it influence you and focus on only killing the culprit of all this, so apply an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and a life for a life only on the people who caused all this, but with the sole objective of giving peace to the deceased," Issei said seriously. "Issei," Kiba said, surprised. "But above all, I tell you this with the sole purpose of you living, Kiba, live remembering both the good and bad memories, without any regrets and with happiness, live so that their sacrifice is not in vain." Issei finished speaking and returned to his place. Kiba was surprised by his friend's words, no one had ever told him something like that, not even though he was his king and the person he trusted the most, so he decided to heed his advice and not do anything reckless, and that the sacrifice of the deceased would not be in vain, as the brown-haired boy had said, of whom he is grateful and promises to reward him later. Back to the conversation. "Okay, that will be enough for now, you may leave," Sona said. Both girls nodded and stood up to leave the place. But Irina would pass by Asia, recognizing her. Aren't you that nun who became a heretic to cure that demon?" Irina asked, turning to look at Asia, who lowered her head in sadness. "Irina, enough, she is not a heretic," Issei said, annoyed. Energy slowly began to come out of his wrist, which was materializing Bomris's sacred gear, and would place himself between Asia and the exorcists. "Tell me something, Asia, do you still believe in our dream?" asked a blue-haired woman seriously and at the same time calmly. "Of course I believe in God, our creator and father," Asia said with a slight headache. "Then allow me to kill you in his name, thus purging any sin you have," said the girl in the movie, raising a sword that was wrapped in bandages. And instantly he lowered it with all his strength with the intention of killing her. Everyone worried except Isaac, but Issei would react quickly and stop the sword with his sacred gear, and then hold it on the edge with the same hand, which burned by the simple fact of the sacred aura that emanated from the sword. Adaptation. Bomris's voice came from the gauntlet gem, adapting the sacred energy to Issei's magic system and making him immune to its effect on the demons. "You dare to attack her?" Her hair slowly turns white, leaving some strands of light brown, and her eyes turn yellow. Knowing that this would start a war, he hits the blue-haired girl in the stomach, causing her to spit out some blood, and then grabs her by the neck, causing her to drop the sword. "Why, let me go, you bastard," the blue-haired girl ordered, but Issei only pulled her down, squeezing her neck tighter, choking her. "You are no one to order me around, nor to judge and give a verdict, you are just such a pathetic being who believes that by doing something in someone else's name, it gives him free will to do whatever he wants, but that is not the case, little one." He tightens his grip. "Because the one who decides that is me," he finishes saying, Issei creating a demonic sword. The sword itself emitted the purest demonic aura in the room, not even the fact that it was a pure-blooded demon matched its purity, making it seem like just another one of the bunch, like a lower class. "Your last little words," said the now white-haired man with brown locks, but at that moment he would fall unconscious to the ground. After that, Saji, along with Momo and Tsubaki, went to help Issei, while Irina went to help her friend. "Zenovia, are you okay?" Irina asked the blue-haired girl. "Yes, I am," she said angrily, standing up and taking the sword that was on the ground. She was about to jump towards Issei, but the orange-haired girl stopped her. "No, Zenovia, we will leave now or this will all get worse," Irina said seriously, beginning to pull her. "But," said Zenovia, but Irina silenced her and took her out of the place. Meanwhile, Saji and his entourage mates placed Issei on the couch. "What was that?" Momo asked worriedly. "I don't know, maybe his dragon will possess me," Ria suggested. "I haven't done anything Gremory, so don't jump to conclusions," said Bombers from the bracelet gem, indignant. "So who was it?" asked Asia, supporting Ria's idea. "I have some suspicions, but anyway, that's none of your business, so don't upset Issei for now," Bomber said. Then the gem of his sacred gear stopped shining, and the divine gear itself disappeared. "We better take him to the infirmary," Sona said, to which everyone nodded. Issei's mental space. Issei, where are you?" Bomber said, walking around the place that was a huge sewer, with various rooms, and everything had water that reached 30 centimeters. The dragon continued searching for his friend, practically the only friend he had, with some exceptions or something that resembled a friend, leaving aside family ties. He was like that until he heard a familiar noise. Chiss, 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 chiss. The sound of swords clashing against each other, so following it, he was surprised by what he saw. It was Issei with the appearance he had when he almost killed the blue-haired girl, but now his hair was completely white and he had the typical evil and sadistic smile of crazy psychopaths. But what surprised him the most was seeing him fight against another version of himself, but with blue eyes. He had a serious and angry look towards the yellow-eyed Issei, who from one moment to the next turned red and created a shockwave of pure demonic power, which drove away his blue-eyed version that created two sacred swords. "What's wrong, ruler, can't you beat me?" asked a red-eyed Issei with amusement and malice. "You have this, Avenger, if you keep trying to control Issei, this will only get worse," said the blue-eyed Issei known as ruler. "Get worse?" I asked incredulously. "Nothing will get worse, ruler, if not the opposite, everything will get better. Issei has the power to do whatever he wants, and he doesn't use it. We can be the kings of the world, but the faggot doesn't do it because of your stupid kindness that influences him. Issei has the body, and I just want to put in the desire," said the red-eyed Issei known as Avenger. "And how many will die from it?" ruler asked seriously. "Does it matter? The only thing that matters is that we will be kings over gods and beings who believe themselves superior to humans and each other," said Avenger launching himself again towards ruler, but the latter stops him with his twin swords, since even if Avenger had a demonic sword, he couldn't do much against two swords and practically nothing against a sacred aura. "You're crazy," Rule said angrily, pushing the red-eyed man away from him with his two swords. "And who do you think were the ones who turned me like this, who took away my happiness and innocence?" said Avenger angrily, launching himself against ruler again, but now creating another sword, equalizing the fight between them a little. Bombers was surprised to find those two versions of his friend, but deeper inside he managed to see Issei himself chained and wrapped in chains. It was evident that he was suffering but was not conscious. Bombers got worried, so acting quickly, he charged energy in his mouth and fired it in the form of an oval sphere of purple plasma, which headed towards both versions of Issei. "Damn, I think we'll have to suspend our conflict, see you later rules," said Avenger smiling, although annoyed being hit by Bombers' attack, thus he disappeared being the same case as ruler. Issei Bombers called out as he ran towards Issei. Once she was with him she saw that he was beginning to wake up, but after a short time he began to disappear, which meant that he was awakening in the physical world. "Damn, well, I can't do much now, I just have to investigate this," Bomber said once Issei finished disappearing. Outside the Issei's mental space. He was waking up on one of the infirmary beds, disoriented, looking around, seeing a head of black hair and a head of white hair. Issei, Elizabeth and Momo exclaimed, hugging the brunette to see if he would open his eyes. But what?" Issei asked confused. "Issei, what happened to you?" Elizabeth asked worriedly, taking Issei by the shoulders. "How? What happened? Wait, how did I get here?" the brown-haired man asked confused. "You fainted at the occult club, so we had to bring you here," Momo replied. "Damn, I don't remember anything," Issei said holding his head. "Wait, you don't remember what happened?" Elizabeth asked confused and somewhat anxious. "Yes, well, I remember being in the club and then something happened, but I don't know what," Issei said, frustrated with himself for not being able to remember. "I see," Momo whispered, then cleared her throat. "I'll go call the others," Momo said, standing up. "Okay," Issei said. "Okay, wait for me here. I'll be back in a few minutes," Momo said as she left the place. Time after. "Issei, what happened to you? I asked you to enter the infirmary seriously." But at that moment, Elizabeth, who was still next to Issei, looked into the red-haired woman's eyes, and for a moment, the Grimoire heiress felt her heart stop for 5 seconds, which left her trembling in place and looking at the black-haired woman with horror and fear, which was noticed by the area that accompanied her, and she could feel the same as Ria's. She smiles and turns to look at Issei. "Well, Issei, I have to go back to my class, see you later," Elizabeth said, caressing the brown-haired boy's head who was embarrassed by that. After that Elizabeth passed by the two demons, and both could feel the aura of death entering and leaving their bodies. When the black-haired woman walked away from them, both were about to start crying because of the fear and terror they felt at that moment. Time skip a few hours after classes. After Rissa and Sona calmed down, Issei's interrogation began, resulting in that the brown-haired boy didn't do anything, that he didn't know what happened, much less be aware of it, so they had no choice but to let him go. Now Issei was walking through the streets of his city, with nothing to do since he wouldn't even go out to patrol at night, by orders of Ria's, who was convinced by Sona to at least rest that day. But as he turned a corner, his calm expression changed to a poker face, with a drop of sweat running down his head as he looked around at the blue-haired girl, asking for money from people passing by. "What are you doing?" Issei asked, walking towards them. "What do you care, dirty demon?" said the blue-haired woman angrily. "We have spoken, since we have not eaten for some days, so we are asking for help from people who pass by here," Irina replied. Issei let out a tired sigh at that and looked at the two as if they were little girls. I'll feed you. Issei said as he began to walk. We don't need your help, said the blue-haired girl, but her stomach growled with great annoyance. You were saying? Issei asked with amusement, his left eye slightly turning a golden color. Some minutes later. Issei and the two exorcists were in a restaurant, both girls were eating desperately. They were definitely hungry, Issei thought, smiling somewhat uncomfortably. Bet ready to lose all your savings, buddy, ha 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 ha. Bombers laughed in Issei's mind. Ha ha ha, how funny, Issei thought with neutrality and some annoyance. Thanks for the food, the blue-haired girl said reluctantly, looking away. Yes, thank you very much for the food, may the Lord bless you, Issei Kunarina said, but the blue-haired girl elbowed her in annoyance. Thanks, and by the way, why do you look at me all the time with annoyance? Issei asked confused. What? I asked angrily. Why am I upset with you? You tried to kill me, bastard, said the blue-haired girl getting up from the table and calling the attention of some people. Zenovia noticed that, so she sat back down embarrassed. I don't have the slightest idea of what you're talking about. I don't remember anything that happened when you went to talk to my king in Kaichu. I only remember the reason why you're here. Issei responded honestly. The two girls stared at him, Irina surprised and Zenovia between an incredulous expression and a poker face, not believing what the brown-haired boy said. What? Do I have something on my face? Issei asked, bringing his hand to his face and looking to see if he had something on his face. Irina swallowed and then spoke. It's not that, we were just surprised by what you told us, but I tell you that I believe you since you would never do something like that, Irina said, changing her expression of surprise to a smile. You don't even know him, said Bombras angrily to himself. Issei was going to speak, but Zenovia stepped forward. Why didn't the holy aura of my sword hurt you? Zenovia asked. That's because of my dragon's adaptation ability, it allows me to adapt to situations, and something that hurt me before no longer hurts me, apart from adapting that damage to my body, Issei responded calmly. How is that last one? Irina asked confused. Look, he extends his arm and making sure that no human saw it, he creates a small sphere of sacred energy, which surprised both exorcists. I don't know when I got it, but it's the same one that has that sword wrapped in bandages that you have, surely I was in contact with it, and Bombers adapted me to it so that it wouldn't hurt me and adapted the same energy to my magic circuit, Issei responded calmly, and then got rid of the sphere of energy. Magic circuit? What is that? Zenovia asked confused. Magic circuits are like pipes in people's bodies, these allow the perfect manipulation of magic, but only for those who have studied, discussed and mastered magic circuits. It is one of the various ways to manipulate magic, Issei responded. Does everyone have it? Zenovia asked curiously again. No, only humans, but my dragon rebuilt them for me after I became a demon, and right now, half dragon, although if I remember correctly, Yokai also had magic circuits, or rather chakra circuits, Issei said at the end somewhat thoughtfully. Why did you decide to become a demon? Irina asked curiously and seriously. I didn't decide it, I had been killed by a fallen angel, and Riaz reincarnated me as one of his nobility. The brown-haired man responded with some seriousness. I mean, you didn't do it for power? Irina asked, somewhat embarrassed. What? No, of course not, after all, why would a human want brute power in a world governed by laws? Apart from the economic and political power that could be obtained, but let's be honest, I practically started as a lower class, when would I be able to change class? Would they at least allow me? And the way to obtain that political and economic power would be the same way as if I did it as a human being, so in itself, I don't see the big deal in being a demon, and more so that we have weaknesses against everything religious and light magic, which by the way, is almost everywhere in the world, Issei responded honestly and calmly. That makes sense to me, Zenovia added in agreement with the brown-haired boy. Apart from that, from what I can see, you are human and your mana reserves are high, and that is enough proof to show that humans are not weak, apart from the fact that it is not all about power, but also about experience, ingenuity and intelligence, Issei said calmly. Irina felt flattered by that, while Zenovia felt nothing, after all it's not like she had any common sense or what she knew was a compliment or what one should feel about it. Yeah, well, leaving that aside, why are you helping us? Zenovia asked seriously. Although I am no longer human, I still retain my humanity and the will of one, apart from the fact that this way I prevent a war from starting and innocent humans from dying, added to the fact that this is a trap, Issei responded, resting his head on his hand, which had his elbow resting on the table. Trap? What trap? Irina asked confused. How many fragments of the true Excalibur were stolen? The brown-haired boy asked. 4, answered Zenovia. And how many are there and how many do you have? Issei asked again. There are 7 in total to recreate the true Excalibur that God created, and in total we have 2, with the Excalibur rules missing, Zenovia answered again. Exactly, it is obvious that this is a trap to obtain his 2 Excalibur, not counting ruler, who as I understand it disappeared centuries in the past. Apart from that, I think that whoever did all this wants to start a war between heaven and the underworld, Issei said seriously. How did you come to that conclusion? Irina asked. You see, why else would he come to Kuo, right in demonic territory, and more than that they sent 2 exorcists whose weapons are one of the powerful ones, and who can finish off demons easily, just think about it, and more than that your record and the blue-haired ones are open to everyone, where it says their skills, personalities and capabilities. Along with their weaknesses and disadvantages, Issei responded. What do you mean? Asked Zenobia. That there is a traitor or traitors in the church who are allied with the one who stole the swords, Issei reported seriously. That's a lie, no one in the church would do that, Irina said angrily. So answer me, Irina, how did they manage to steal the 4 fragments of the true Excalibur without being discovered, if not after having done it? How did it take them so long to find its parallel, knowing that the swords, although being fragments of one, still possess and emit enough power to be easily detected? Why did it take them so long to send someone for them? And besides, you say that no one in the church would dare to do something like that. Then tell me, why are there priests, exorcists and more affiliated with the renegade church? And why do Fried and Valpert do all this? Issei asked, leaving the orange-haired girl silent and the blue-haired girl surprised by such questions, which, thinking about it, the brown-haired girl was right. Just because you're right doesn't mean you're right, besides that's because they're human, and humans make mistakes all the time, Irina said desperately. Zenobia looked at her with a poker face, already knowing that her friend was not the most intelligent person in the world, and she was already used to these hasty actions of Irina to defend the honor and prestige of the church. But still there are times when she goes too far. Issei got angry at this and faced the orange-haired girl. Irina, are you saying that humans are the weakest and most insignificant beings in the world? Issei asked seriously. Why yes, Irina answered, but then she thought about what she said and covered her mouth in horror. Zenobia only gave herself a faceban for her friend's idiocy. Let me tell you something, Irina, humans are superior to supernatural beings. Do you want to know why? Asked a brown-haired man. I want to know, Zenobia replied, interested. Well, yes, Irina said nervously and embarrassed. Humans are selfish and greedy, they are also sinners, like demons, but unlike them, humans learn from their mistakes and accept their flaws, which is not the same case as demons, or at least most of them. Then the fallen angels, the arrogant and lustful fallen angels, who get carried away by their already set arrogance and also by pride. Acting more for the pleasures of sin than for any other reason, humans do it, but they do not rule their lives to those ideals. Apart from that, they overcome those sins and become better people, and then the angels of heaven, pure seers, but if they do something sinful or show their negative emotions, they will fall, unlike them. Humans have free will to be whoever they want and to do what they want in the world, unlike the angels, who prefer their divine image to falling for being free, Issei responded simply. And what about the deities and other magical beings? Zenobia asked curiously. Dragons are married, beings of mythologies the same, and are treated as impure or weak beings by others and among themselves, while most have the same defects as angels, fallen angels and demons. Others are considered as simple servants or animals that can be ordered, while they're gods and divinities. Well, guess what, when the people believe in them. But the same people see them bleed. He smiles, and his eyes turn golden, with a faint glow of evil in them. They stop being divinities and only become simple beings, human, simple ordinary humans. Their beloved followers leave them aside, stop believing in them, leave their faith, and continue with their lives. And what happens to the gods when that happens? Simple, they are forgotten for all eternity, Issei said, but then returned to normal and shook his head, and then was confused. While he did that, both girls looked at him in disbelief, and Irina more so. She didn't remember that her friend was like that. While the blue-haired girl was surprised by the words that the brown-haired boy said. He was right, but even so, she was not going to give up her faith for the Lord. After all, without a doubt he is a true god, since he created a complete universe with its living seers. Well, whatever, he spoke, getting the attention of the two. I'm going to help them to prevent something bad from happening, Issei said seriously. Isn't this going against your master's decisions? Asked Zenobia. Well, yes it is, but if something is not done now, perhaps everything will get worse, and the expected results will be different, and these will only bring more and more problems that can end with the death of innocent people, and between you and me, in the people that we love with all our hearts, Issei said seriously. Both girls agreed with him. Okay, when are we leaving? At night, Issei replied. That same night. Issei, who had his vigilante suit on, was standing next to both exorcists. The three of them were running directly towards a source of sacred power and a demonic one. The closer they were to the source, Issei could feel the demonic aura in a better way, realizing that it was Kiba's, so accelerating his speed to reinforce his body with magic, Issei would reach an alley in a few seconds. Entering there he found Kiba wielding two swords, while in front of him was someone that Issei really hated. Freed Selzen, said the brown-haired man in a whisper and angrily, but he was surprised by what the ex-exorcist had. The fast Excalibur was the weapon carried by the crazy renegade exorcist, who launched himself to attack Kiba, but Issei was not going to allow that, so he reacted quickly and launched himself forward, but even with his reinforced speed, he could not arrive in time. Prepare to create a sword, partner, Bombra said in Issei's mind. At that, and knowing his friend, Issei materialized his sacred gear and created a simple sword in his left hand. Copy came from the gauntlet gem, while the speed-boosting ability of the fast Excalibur was copied by Bombras. A pale golden aura in the shape of his body was generated from the chestnut, which increased his speed and allowed him to stop Freed's attack with his own sword. Hello again, crazy, Issei greeted with a smile but at the same time serious. You damn meddling kid, if it weren't for you, my plan to kill this demon wouldn't have failed. Freed said, annoyed, jumping away from Issei backwards. What can I say, that's how I am, Issei said, creating an Earl's magic circle and taking out the golden and silver sword that he used to kill the berserker-type renegade demon. At that, Freed smiled evilly, then turned around and ran away. Damn, the brown-haired boy exclaimed. Go for it, said Zenobia following the ex-exorcist, being followed by Irina. Don't wait, both girls were no longer in the place. Damn it, Kiba, come with me, Issei ordered seriously. And why? Yuto asked, confused. Because it's obvious that it's a trap and if they die, they'll blame us, Issei said obviously, then ran off in search of the two exorcists. It's a valid point, Yuto said, and then followed Issei. Chapter 4. Flutter, flutter, flutter. Huh, what's that? Asked Tsubaki. He was in the occult club with his king and clanmates, with them the Gremory group. The fluttering grew louder, and they managed to feel a magical presence. When they least expected it, a figure crossed the wall, alerting everyone. Several created magic circles, others prepared for the fight and activated their sacred gear, but when the smoke faded, it showed someone being surrounded by a large dragon wing with claws on the part where the triple joint begins like the image above. I just imagined that the wing is longer and has claws on the part where the three joints are divided, like the image of Bombras. Although they also managed to visualize two demon wings on the right, when these wings opened everyone was surprised, turning out to be Issei, whose left arm was that of a dragon, his left eyes had a black sclera, with a purple iris and a white slit pupil, he had fangs instead of his human teeth. And some scales on his cheeks like Mia from Monster Musume, added to the long dragon tail that was on his lower back, which ended in several spikes. Under his right arm was Kiba, who had some wounds that were healed by an emerald aura coming out of Issei's body. On his other arm was Zenobia, who was the same as Kiba, being healed by an emerald aura, and Irina on Issei's chest, tied in threads of celestial energy, like the previous two, being healed by an emerald aura coming out of Issei. What the hell are you doing, you damn lunatic, shouted a euphoric and upset Donut to an Issei who soon fell to the floor unconscious. Time after. Damn, Issei said in pain, getting up on an improvised bed in the occult club, but at that moment someone grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and pulled him, standing in front of Sona. Damn brainless lunatic, what the hell is wrong with you? You almost killed us all, Sona shouted angrily. Sorry, I couldn't control my flight, we were badly injured, Issei said desperately. Sona let out a sigh to relax and let it go. What happened for them to end up like this? Sona asked, crossing her arms and with her serious tone, which was more serious than usual. The trap, replied Kiba, who had just woken up. How is that? I asked, confused. He had been attacked by one of Kakabiel's envoys, Freed Selzen, the renegade exorcist who was allied with the angels who kidnapped Asia. Kiba continued talking to look at Issei. We discovered that all the fallen angels that are in the area are sent by Kakabiel, and that they and Kakabiel are also renegades of Grigori himself, since they are not under the command of the leader of the fallen angels. But it was after Freed's attack on Kiba, that after that and preventing Freed from hurting Kiba, these two, I point to Zenobia and Irina, who were waking up. They ran after Freed, who had one of the fragments of the true Excalibur. He guided us to an abandoned church where Kakabiel was. We fought, he beat us up, I made him angry by making him say more, and then we fled, with a message from him, Issei said, rubbing some parts of his body. What message? Riaz asked again. That he will come here to kill them at 2, and that we only have 12 hours to prepare, Kiba responded, being helped by Asia to get up. W what? And W why? I asked, surprised. Why do you want to start a war? Zenobia replied next to Irina, who had her head down and was in a slight state of shock. What do you mean? Kani asked without understanding. Both Kiba and Zenobia turned to look at Issei completely, who had a vein in his head containing the annoyance. He lets out a sigh to relax. He plans to kill Ryu-san and Kaichu-san with Excalibur to cause a war. If he kills them, there will be a war between the underworld and Grigori, then kills Inovia and Irina, who are exorcists and happen to be close acquaintances of elites in heaven, so killing them will start a war between heaven and Grigori. Which will cause sooner or later there to be a war between heaven and the underworld, which will start a new war of the three factions, Issei explained better. And do you know why he wants to start a new war? Sona asked seriously. Because all this is a whim of his, he wants to start a new war because he is not satisfied with how the last one ended, Issei responded, getting up with Saji's help. That's the most childish and absurd thing I've heard so far, Saji said with a poker face. I practically said that to his face and he gave me the beating of my life. Issei said, rubbing his shoulder. It wasn't the smartest thing in your life, Saji said with a drop of sweat falling down his forehead. But not the stupidest either, Issei said with a smile of victory. If they've already stopped playing, we have to prepare ourselves, we can't take this lightly, Sona said, adjusting her glasses. We take that into account, Issei said, beginning to return to his human form, but he would stop doing so when he fell to the floor in pain, worrying several people in the place. Are you okay? Asked Momo and Tsubaki approaching him. Yes, damn, I consumed a lot of my magical energy, so much that I can't even return to my normal form, Issei said tiredly. You better rest for now, we will prepare what is necessary. Said Riaz with a smile. Issei relaxed and nodded. Time later with Issei and Saji. What do you think is going to happen? Saji asked Issei. It was getting dark and the 12 hours were almost up. The brown-haired boy still had certain parts of his body still that of a dragon, both were on the roofs of the academy. I don't know, but the important thing is that we finish this now. Issei said calmly. By the way, have you already achieved your balance breaker? Saji asked Issei. Yes and no, I have it, but I'm not yet able to activate it at will, apart from the fact that it's a prototype based on Isaac's armor, Issei replied. I see, said Saji, imagining what Issei's armor would be like. Yes, but I won't stay with that one, then I would have to make more changes and improvements, Issei said calmly. Improvements? Saji asked confused. Yes, the armor has several flaws, apart from the fact that they are praying to add weapons of this era and technology, Issei responded. And why is that? Saji asked curiously and somewhat confused. Saji, we are practically in the 21st century, it is time to leave the old, outdated, aside, and also a little bit of magic. Humans achieved great things that the supernatural underestimates, apart from that way I would have more attack power from a distance, and I will also include some gadgets, Issei responded. Didn't your grandfather specialize in gadgets? Saji asked. That was my grandmother and her company, I think they had all their plans, books and other things related to technology in their cabin in the woods, the brown-haired man corrected his friend. And your grandfather? He was more on the weapon side, Issei replied. Then you already have what I need, said Saji with a smile. Yeah, well, I don't have it, since my parents took all their money when they died, and I don't even know who has the rights to their company, Issei said, and then let out a sigh and fell on his back. Are you okay? Saji asked worriedly, watching as Issei put his forearm over his eyes. No, every day that passes since I was 12 years old I feel that something in me will break, Issei responded tiredly. Do you want to talk about it? Saji asked. I would, if only I knew what it was, Issei said, taking his arm out of his eyes and seeing the full moon, for a moment seeing two versions of himself, both white-haired but with different eyes, one had golden eyes and the other had blue eyes. I think you should continue resting, Saji suggested, sitting next to Issei. If perhaps you are right, said Issei, but at that moment two chasmisus glows appeared in the courtyard of his academy, to which they looked out on the roof to see what it was. Holy shit, they said at the same time, seeing two dogs with 3 heads and brown fur, who were drooling lava and their eyes were bright red. Really ugly, Bombers thought to himself. We have to go get the others, Saji said. Issei nodded and followed him. Minutes later. The barrier rose around the Kuo Academy, thanks to the Citri clan, while the Gremory clan along with Saji and Mito were in the academy courtyard, in front of them the two Cerberus, who looked at them with rage and a great amount of bloodlust. Let's split into 2 groups, Akeno, Kaneko, Isaac, Kani and Asia with me, Issei, Saji, Mito, Kiba, go for the one on the right, Riaz ordered, and everyone nodded. Both groups once made and both went against their respective Cerberus. The battle began, where Issei's group quickly won. Riaz had it somewhat difficult when the Cerberus fired flames or jets of wool from its mouths, which injured some of them, but Isaac and Kani soon managed to kill it. With the help of Akeno's lightning bolts launched at long distance, and Kaneko who hit its legs throwing them to the ground and leaving them like target practice. While Issei's group, Saji with his right hand, nullified the Cerberus's magical energy and abilities, leaving it on the defensive, which was taken advantage of by Issei, who created swords from the ground with Kiba leaving it immobile. Although everyone was surprised that Issei could create swords like Kiba, but they put it aside and concentrated on the battle, where from his gauntlet, Mito launched a powerful consecutive blast of golden energy to each of the three heads, which were destroyed by the attack. Once all that was over, they began to hear applause from above, so they turned around and looked at the sky and were surprised by what they saw. The fallen angel with 10 wings, black hair, pale skin, pointy ears and yellow eyes with red sclera, sat on a throne while clapping and smiling maliciously. Well, I see that you managed to finish off my dogs, but unfortunately it won't be easy for you now, said the fallen angel with his evil smile. Who are you? I ordered, laughing in an authoritarian tone. It's not obvious, girl, I'm Copiado, or did your slaves not tell you I was coming? I asked with irony. So what Issei said was true, she whispered, laughing in surprise. But anyway, you should already know why I'm here, Grimory, so let's end this now, said Copiado, but by pure instinct he jumped from his throne, avoiding a blast of pure destructive power. Everyone turned to see where that burst of energy came from and saw Zenobia with Excalibur destruction in her 2 hands. Next to him was Irina, who had a sword made by Kiba, since hers had been stolen. Copiado just sighed at that, then smiled maliciously and looked at both exorcists. And where have you been all this time? Asked Copiado. Zenobia had a vein pop out of her head from the contained anger and looked at Issei out of the corner of her eye. Someone was supposed to tell us when you would come while we rest, but they never did it. Zenobia replied, and the brown-haired boy got nervous. Well, whatever, Fried killed them both and then the others, but yes, leave some for me, said Copiado with arrogance and evil. When he least expected it, a kind of golden whip was sent against Zenobia's neck, who didn't notice it, but when they least expected it, Kiba deflected the attack with one of his swords, and Issei grabbed the whip and pulled it towards him, lifting it and causing the person who threw it to be hit against the ground, turning out to be Fried, who was carrying a new sword. I've never seen so much poop together with my own eyes, said Bombrus in Issei's mind, who heard him and almost laughed. But when he least expected it, the golden whip, which came out from Fried's sword, was attracted and returned to the sword, making a cut on Issei's left hand. Damn, the brown-haired boy cursed as he began to regenerate. So that's what they did with the stolen fragments of the true Excalibur, they used them in a stupid attempt to recreate the sword, said Zenobia, surprised. We could have recreated it if only you had given us Excalibur destruction, said another person entering the battlefield, being below Copiado. Alper Galilei, Kiba said angrily and seriously, his demonic power leaking through his eyes that turned red and his pupils tore. And soon they began to emanate crimson energy. Kiba, concentrate, if you attack directly you will only die, realize who is above Valper, Issei said seriously and creating 2 swords in each hand. He let out a sigh. Okay, but then you will tell me how you can create swords just like me, Udo said, and his eyes stopped emanating crimson energy, but they remained the same. Okay, Issei said, preparing for the fight by blocking Fried. This will be entertaining, Copiado said, watching the Grimory group along with Saji and Mito approach him. Isaac, entering his balance breaker, launched himself against Copiado, while Canny entered her own balance breaker. From all his armor, lines began to generate in the form of tentacles with blades at the end that had a red gem, like in the image, that were directed against Copiado, who protected himself with a magical barrier from the attacks of the Haidu brothers. And I was thinking this would be entertaining, Copiado said, but he would fly backwards, avoiding a flare of purple and black fire, which came from Canny, who stood on the side of the cable. Don't underestimate us, idiot, Canny said angrily. And I don't plan to take back what I said, Copiado said, creating several spells behind him with various geometric shapes, in which several spheres of light measuring 1 meter in diameter began to appear, which were launched against those from the Grimory clan and their companions. But Issei and the others. Issei was clashing swords against Fried, but at the same time, the others who were with him were also fighting against another Fried. This one had made copies of himself, an ability that he obtained to operate the fragments of Excalibur mimic, nocturnal and fast. Copy came from Issei's sacred gear. Let's go, Issei said, the pale golden aura appeared around him, increasing his speed and his attacks. 2 clones appeared next to him. So that's why he could generate swords just like me, Kiba thought in amazement, but he had to block the sword of one of the Fried. Creating a golden whip from the palm of his hand, he would manage to immobilize one of the Fried and then pull and decapitate it, making it disappear in particles of light. Not bad for a hitch, like you said, Fried clashing his Excalibur fusion with Zenobia's Excalibur destruction. Ugh, you've got me fed up, said Zenobia. Her sword began to glow, then she made a slash in the air and sent a wave of pure destructive power that killed Fried's clone. What's wrong, demon? Are you tired? Fried asked Kiba, who saw him with a poker face. The truth is yes, but only from you, Kiba said, and then jumped behind him and hit the ground with his palm. After that, 3 demonic swords came out of the ground and engraved themselves on the clone, killing him instantly. In the name of the Lord I will kill you, said Arena, dodging Freed's attack and making a direct slash to the neck, killing the clone instantly. After that he went with the others who were grouping together, seeing that Issei and his clones were fighting with 4 clones of Freed. The original was under Copiado and Valper. Don't just stand there watching, go get the others, Issei said seriously, to which everyone paid attention. But at that moment Isaac would fall in front of him, a clone eliminated. He was badly wounded and almost unconscious, with some spears of light passing through his body. Issei was surprised and then saw where it came from and saw how Canny was thrown to the ground by Copiado, leaving her unconscious. Is this the best you have? The fallen man asked without his robe and with 2 swords made of light magic. Shut up, Akeno and Rias shouted, launching 2 magic attacks from their respective attributes, but with a simple spell in the form of a magic circle, it was enough for Copiado to protect himself. And to think that I expected more from you, Copiado said, beginning to approach them. Balance breaker, shouted Mito, running towards Copiado while she was surrounded by a golden armor of violet gems, something similar to Isaac's armor, which deployed turbine-like wings from which the remaining parts were formed in the form of energy. Let's see if you can handle this, you bastard, said Mito, extending both arms. From his palms, a sphere began to form that emitted a large amount of sunlight. I can't be that, that's a sun, Issei said in shock, seeing how the sphere stopped emitting its powerful shine and showed a sphere of confessed fire that was nothing more and nothing less than a small sun of about 1 meter in diameter. Sunny shot, said the blonde-haired girl before hitting the sphere and throwing it at a surprised Copiado. But from one moment to the next the Cable smiled and created a spell in front of him that had several geometric shapes that when the nano-sun collided with the spell, it began to dissolve, and on the other side where Copiado was, black and yellow butterflies began to appear and it remained like that until the sun disappeared. What a shame that you are so hasty and stupid to believe that you could kill me. He created 6 spells in the form of magic circles behind him, each one fired a spear of light which at great speed were recorded in myth, causing him to fall to the ground and lose his balance breaker. You are still weak, and more so if it is night, Golden Emperor, Copiado said with a superior smile, then turned to look at Rias. Said the red-haired woman, releasing the power of destruction, but Copiado undid the attack with just 1 blow of his hand. Really pathetic, just look around you, Grimory, your slaves tired and unable to move, and those who can't, taking care of Freed with difficulty. But anyway, it's time to end this, said the Cable to cross his swords in a cross and make 2 thrusts to the front that sent 2 waves of power in the shape of a crescent moon that crossed in the shape of an X. With Issei, he stabbed a clone of Freed and then turned around and blocked a stab from another clone. It seems that the pieces of true Excalibur not only made their abilities and power be at a single point, but also gave them an increase in power, like a boost but permanent, only that it is multiplied by the number of swords worked, said Bombras in the mind of the brown-haired man, who managed to prop up the clone with his other sword. Yes, I noticed it, Issei said, but at that moment yellow light caught his attention, so turning around he opened his eyes in surprise and without thinking he ran away. With Rias. She closed her eyes, prepared for her inevitable death, but at that moment she was pushed by someone, and when she opened her eyes, she saw how Issei received the attack that arrived, causing a large explosion. The red-haired girl would fall to the ground in a state of shock. She did not move and only saw the place where she was. Turning her head to the right, she saw one of the buildings with a destroyed wall and blood on it. The others who were conscious were surprised by that, except Isaac and Canny, who slightly smiled. Issei, Kiba said in shock, but Valper would speak. Wow, it seems that no matter what happens, misfortune will accompany you, Kiba-kun. All your loved ones die without you being able to do anything, Valper said with a kind smile. Kiba just looked at him, and his eyes began to emanate reddish energy, and he looked at the old man with hatred. Hey Valper, how about you give him that thing? After all, it doesn't work at all, said Copiado with a smile, watching the scene in the distance. Oh yes, I completely forgot about that, said Valper, taking something out of his clothes, turning out to be a blue crystal with a light blue glow inside. Have this boy, said Valper, throwing the crystal that Kiba caught, but it was a serious mistake when in the crystal he managed to see the faces of his friends who died due to the Sacred Sword project. You know, that was the final result of the project. We had achieved it. That crystal grants those who have it the ability to carry one of the legendary sacred swords. It was difficult for me, but I managed to understand that what I needed was the essence of light itself, and not to inject one's own light into the children. But look at the bright side, with all their deaths we have come to this. This result was what Kiba simply wanted, but unfortunately the first one I created never worked, so I give it to you. Let's see what you can do with it, said Valper, smiling macabrely. "Why you bastard," said Kiba with the crystal in his hands and beginning to cry. Everything around him began to darken until it became completely black. "Don't cry, Kiba-kun." Kiba looked up and saw a girl in front of him. She was translucent and a blue aura surrounded her, giving her the same color. Kiba only cried more, entering a state of shock. "Hey Ori, is that you?" Kiba asked, crying and with a pained voice. "Nope, not just me, Kiba-kun, it's all of us," said Kaori, and then more boys and girls started to appear around Kiba. "How long, Kiba?" "Hello, Ani-sama. It's good I'll see Tato again." It's been a long time, shorty." "Hi guys," Kiba said in shock. "Who's more stupid?" Kaori said, putting one of her hands on one of the blonde-haired boy's cheeks. "How is it that?" said Kiba, but a knot in his neck did not allow him to speak. "The crystal, the reason it never worked on the others is because we didn't allow it, but now that we're before you, it's time to see what we're capable of doing," said one of the boys with a confident smile. "I don't deserve it, I've been selfish and a complete idiot about all of this," Kiba said in pain. "You weren't, because of that boy over there who sacrificed himself for his leader," Kaori said calmly. "This is Issei he is," Kiba said, but a girl who was older than the others interrupted him. "That pretty face is still alive, but dying, so for him and for us accept this, Kiba," he said, to bring his hands to Kiba's side and bring them to the blonde's chest, joining it with the crystal. But Kiba said, but a blow from the boy who was the oldest interrupted him. "Dwarf, your friend who gave you support and confidence, something that not even menstruation hair did for you, so accept this, for us and for him, become strong to live and live to be strong, and thus be able to overcome the obstacles to live in peace. Do not make our sacrifice be in vain," said the angry boy, and Kiba lowered his head. "You really are a fool," Kiba said to himself. "Not exactly, but you resembled one," said Kaori with a beautiful giggle that encouraged Kiba. "Okay, I'll do it," Kiba said determinedly, raising his head. "That's how it's done, dwarf," said the older boy, then turned into particles of light and entered the crystal. "Good luck, Tato. See you, Ani-sama. Good luck, friend." "Well, it's just me left," Kaori said, getting closer to Kiba. "Kaori," Kiba said, but at that moment the girl kissed him on the lips. "See you, Kiba-kun," said Kaori, separating from the kiss and turning into particles of light to enter the crystal. Kiba just saw the crystal as he returned to reality, being watched by everyone with attention. He just got up from the ground and looked at Valper with seriousness and determination, without any negative emotions, and he carried it to his side, his chest being enveloped by a celestial aura that entered his body, surprising the attackers. "For all those who gave their lives for me, all those who trusted and trust me, Ayudo Kiba, swear that with my sword, the sword of betrayal, I will kill you," Kiba said, his grey eyes releasing a light purple aura and then raising his sword to the sky. "Prepare to be a purger, you damn bastards," Kiba said seriously and coldly, wielding his sword, which released a demonic and sacred aura. But Issei. He himself was dying, lying in rubble, a beam stabbing his chest and piercing his heart. The only thing keeping him alive was that his own sacred gear worked as a substitute for his own heart. Everything stopped for him. He heard Bomber's voice telling him not to give up, not to die, begging for them, but little by little, his voice grew farther away from the chestnut until he heard nothing. Some debris would fall towards his face, but they remained suspended in the air. He looked up and saw in front of him his companions, his sister and brother, his loved ones. No one moved. It was as if all time had frozen, but some footsteps caught his attention. "Are you going to give up that easily?" the person next to him asked seriously. "Who are you? Why do you have my face?" Issei asked agonizingly. "I am you, or something like that. Let's say I am a part of you, of your soul that was divided years ago, but if you want call me ruler or blue rules," responded looking at the brown-haired boy. "I didn't understand," Issei said. "That doesn't matter, the important thing is to finish Copiado once and for all. If we don't kill him now, hundreds, thousands no, millions of innocents will die. Are you willing to allow that to happen?" asked Rules. Issei lowered his head helplessly. "I can't do anything, I'm weak," Issei replied with disappointment. "You are not, it's just that you have not yet obtained your true potential yet, but you are right about one thing, in your current state you cannot do anything, so that's why." He extends his hand to Issei. "Let me take care of this, I promise you that everything will turn out well," said Rules determinedly. Issei looked at him for a while in doubt, but what could he do in his state? Nothing, he couldn't do anything, he was weak and pathetic, so making his decision he looked Rules in the eyes. "Okay, but please don't fail," said Issei, shaking his hand with the faith. Rules which smiled kindly. "I promise you, Issei, I won't fail," said Rules. After that the whole place shined. In the reality, everyone was motionless, watching in horror at Copiado, behind the Valper with a spear piercing his heart. The cable had told a truth that had been kept hidden all this time, the reason why Kiba carried a sacred demonic sword. The biblical god is dead. Those words were enough to leave everyone in shock and some horrified, although Isaac and Candy didn't care much about that fact. So that's why he never listened to my prayers, said a voice behind everyone, who turned around and saw Blue with his eyes glowing and blue flames coming out of his left eye. Rules began to walk as he materialized his sacred gear in his left hand. Seal destroyed came from the gauntlet gem, ancient runes, Japanese words, and phosphorescent lines began to appear on the gauntlet, all in a light blue color, while the metal of it turned dark blue, with some golden parts, and its neon blue gems that shone. Seal destroyed. Copiado whispered. In the entire history of sacred gear only 5 sacred gear have seals self-imposed by the old man, perhaps he smiles, but starts to sweat cold. Wow Grimory, I can't believe it, how did I not realize before, the boy did the same thing that Freed could do with the Excalibur fusion, Copiado said. What do you mean? I asked, laughing, confused. Don't you know? The dragon that boy possesses is not just any dragon, after all he carries the dragon that was about to kill the biblical god, after leaving the Golden Empress and the Dragon King Vritra on the verge of death, Copiado revealed, leaving everyone in shock. That's impossible, said Riaz, not believing it. It's true, he almost killed me and Sunny because of our stupidity, Vritra responded from Canny's sacred gear, leaving everyone more in shock except Copiado. That doesn't matter, Blue said, drawing everyone's attention. It's time to end this, Ruler said, creating a western sword and a katana. I don't know who you are, but I feel like I can trust you, said Bombers from the gem of his sacred gear. Thank you, although I do not ask for your trust, I only ask that you help him to finish off this guy, said Ruler, being enveloped by a celestial aura that increased his speed. Of course I will, answered the dragon. Evolution, Bombers' voice came from the gauntlet gem, after that the celestial aura that surrounded Rules intensified, multiplying his speed. Said Copiado, blocking Rule's double stab with one of his spears, after that he created spells in the form of magic circles behind him, from which several spears of light were shot out. Copy came from the gem, and behind the Rules several spells in the form of magic circles identical to those of Copiado, and then you launch several spears of light. Evolution, above the magic circles other geometric shapes appeared, improving them and firing more spears of light, which were now more similar to the normal ones, but light blue with a bluish glow, which destroyed and pierced Copiado's with ease. He clicked his tongue and began to fly, avoiding the spears from piercing him. But at that moment Rules appeared behind him with a serious and cold look, with now 2 dragon wings, showing his dragon tail, and his eyes those of one. He would cut 3 wings with 2 consecutive cuts, and then begin to channel energy into his left hand. They then hit him with the energy sphere, which was released as a blast of energy that impacted him against the academy courtyard. After that he would dive, with the intention of killing him with his swords, but at that moment the magic barrier surrounding the academy would be destroyed, and a white armor, with golden touches and blue orbs, would be present at the place. On his back 2 pieces of armor came out that projected 2 wings of pure celestial energy. Chapter 5. I see you were entertaining yourselves here, said the armor bearer, who turned out to be a woman from the female voice that was heard. Damn you, no, said Copiado, standing up, but at that moment the person who intervened at the place launched himself against the cable at high speed, hitting it against the ground. After that, he lifted him up and hit him in the stomach, then slammed him against the ground once more and ripped off another 3 of his wings, leaving him unconscious and out of combat. Hey pretty face, this is how you temporarily neutralize an enemy, got it? Said the armored girl to Ruler, who was confused. Wait, he turns over the dice, noticing that he was the only one and that the others were in the distance, with Kiba and Zenobia, who had a golden and blue sword, fighting against Freed and his clones. Are you referring to me? Blue asked, confused. Do you see another pretty face here? The girl asked sarcastically, putting her hands on her hips. That one over there with the blonde hair, he said, pointing at Kiba, who was eliminating 5 clones of Freed. It was sarcasm, asshole, said the annoying girl, taking Copiado and taking flight. Hey, where are you going to take him? Ruler asked seriously, taking a step forward, but at that moment he would fall to the ground with his whole body in pain. What? Are you this guy's girlfriend or what? I asked sarcastically and with little interest. I'll just tell you that I'm taking him to answer some of my old man's questions, so this doesn't concern you at all, said the girl, about to leave, but at that moment someone would speak. Are you ignoring me, White? Asked Drake from the boosted gear of an Isaac being healed by Asia. Maybe yes, maybe not, who knows, Albion answered, the wings of the white armor shone with each word spoken, saying that without interest, making Drake angry. Partner, let's get out of here quickly, Albion said to the girl from his mind. Why? I asked, confused. This is getting interesting, said the girl with amusement. I'll tell you later, let's get out of here now, said Albion seriously. The girl sighed. Whatever, look at Isaac. Hey Red Dragon, you better make your bearer stronger, that way at least I'll have a little fun beating him up, was the last thing he said, before disappearing into the horizon of the night. Well, this is as far as I go, said Ruler before falling unconscious. Time after. Said Issei, getting up on one of the stretchers in the Kuo Academy infirmary. I see you woke up, Sona said at her side. Yeah, I'm awake, no offense Kaichu, but why are you here? Issei asked, rubbing his head with his left hand, realizing that it was that of a dragon. Sona let out a sigh at that and adjusted her glasses. I'm not really here for you, but for everyone here, Sona replied. Issei became confused and looked around, seeing his entourage mates on other stretchers. How long have I been sleeping here? Issei asked. A few days, 2, almost 3 to be exact, Sona said. How are the others? The brown-haired boy asked again. Well, in fact you got better faster than the others. She looks at those on the stretchers. We didn't have many phoenix tears, so we couldn't heal them all instantly, so some stayed here, in the hidden infirmary of the academy. Sona answered. Hidden nursing at the academy? The brown-haired boy asked, confused. Sona just turned her gaze. Issei looked where she was looking and saw a nurse who approached them, but the same nurse just passed through Sona as if she were a ghost, surprising the brunette. Mirror dimension, answered the black-haired girl and then left the place. Mirror dimension? Issei asked in a whisper. According to what I saw in your memories, your grandfather told you about that, Bombra said in Issei's mind. First, you say hello, second, you say how are you, and third, and that's when you tell me about my grandfather. Issei said. Hey, how are you, mate? It's not like you weren't here with me like 5 minutes ago, said Bombra sarcastically. Good point, said Issei, getting up from the walk. Your magic circuit is still activated, that's why you didn't return to normal, Bombra said to Issei, who remained still and closed his eyes. Lines around his entire body began to appear, red on the right side of his body, light blue on the left, and purple in the middle. Disable magic circuits. 85% Issei said after that the fires in his body began to turn off until they almost disappeared, while the brown-haired boy's body slowly returned to normal. After that Issei opened his eyes, and the lines that were barely noticeable were hidden. Okay, but getting back to the topic, had my grandfather told me about this? Issei asked and Bombra spoke. That's right, from what I see, he told you when he was 9, when you went to his cabin in the woods, Bombra replied. Do you think there's something there? Issei asked curiously. Surely, it seems that your grandfather had knowledge of the supernatural world, said Bombra. If it seems that's how it was, said Issei, changing his clothes with a spell projected in the form of a magic circle. Time after. Said Issei, leaving his workplace since he was fired for missing 3 days in a row. Before going there, he stayed at the Kuo Academy, where those present told him what he missed, since he had told them that he did not remember anything that happened after receiving Copiado's attack. He did not even remember why he received it. He discovered that Zenobia was the bearer of a sacred sword, Durandal, the sword used by Roland, a defender of the French border and commander of one of the country's armies, and that she would stay in Kuo not knowing what to do, although she also did not know where to go, which worried the brown-haired man, since no one knew where the blue-haired girl had gone. Issei would not lie that he had liked the blue-haired girl in a certain way, but he did not say anything about that, so he would go out to look for her after going to work. Irina had left the country to meet with her superiors and return the stolen pieces of true Excalibur, even Excalibur destruction. Zenobia had taken it in, since she didn't want to have any problems with the church. After knowing that, the brown-haired boy spent the whole day keeping company to those who were in the infirmary, being rejected by most of them, since they were his entourage companions, except Kiba, Saji and even Mito, who seemed uncomfortable all the time, but Issei ignored it. He also told Riaz and Sona about the copy skill. He wanted to say about the evolution skill, but Bombra didn't allow it. Now the chestnut was walking through the streets of his city, but in that Bombra would speak to him, telling him that he will show it to him when he has mastered it. And my friend, let's go to your grandparents' mackerel, said Bombra animatedly. I can't, I have to look for Zenobia, Issei responded hurriedly. She's okay, I know where she is, said Bombra, surprising the brown-haired boy. How's that? I asked. When everyone was unconscious she spoke to me, she told me not to look for her because she wanted to be alone for at least 5 or 6 days. She is still affected by what Copiado said, Bombra responded calmly. Issei just let out a sigh and then spoke. Okay, that makes sense, the brown-haired boy whispered. So we're going to your grandparents' cabin? Asked the dragon to his friend. Yes, we will go, he smiles a little. But calm down, you look like an 8-year-old child, said Issei amused, changing his trajectory to another. Yeah, Bombra said without interest. Time after. I think I lost him, Issei said with a map in his hands. He was in the middle of a forest. Hey, look over there, partner, said Bombra, appearing the gem on Issei's wrist, who looked up to the side seeing a cabin in the distance, which slightly looked like a mansion. If it's that one, Issei said, putting away the map and beginning to walk to the mackerel. Once there he would notice that it was completely intact, without any deterioration over time. I feel magical energy in the shape of a dome around the cabin, Bombra reported. Then that confirms it, my grandparents or at least one of them had knowledge about the supernatural, Issei said heading to the entrance of the house. Once there he held the handle and instantly the door opened. How timely said Bombras, Issei only agreed with the dragon. Once inside he would see the slightly luxurious and tidy interior of the cabin. Issei looked at the place with a melancholic look, for a moment managing to see himself as a young man playing and spending time with his grandmother and grandfather. He would walk in and enter a room which turned out to be the main living room with a fireplace, remembering how his grandfather would tell fantasy stories in front of the fire, while his grandmother would bring him and his grandfather some snacks. "Buddy, I know it's good to remember the good times, but please don't cry," said Bombras watching how his friend began to cry. "Why yes, sorry, it would be better if we continued what we were doing here," Issei said, wiping away his tears and continuing on his way. He would be walking around the place, which turned out to be completely tidy and clean, as if someone still lived there or that someone would clean it, but unfortunately the truth was different, and Issei knew that, since the dome surrounding the cabin was a kind of dome where everything inside always remains the same, like a time manipulation spell, although really rare and surely extinct. Powerful and dangerous. After walking through the main part of the cabin, he decided to go to the basement, where being a demon and a dragon helped him a lot to be able to see in the dark. Going down the stairs he would reach the end of them, managing to see the basement and noticing that it was also clean and tidy, in a way, since there were some disorganized boxes and some fallen ones, but Issei noticed one that was lying on the floor with some papers. Approaching the box, he took it and arranged it correctly and then began to review the papers. Finding a photo of his grandparents together. "Are they your grandparents?" Bombras asked. "Yes, my grandfather was called Kiritsugu Uemiya and my grandmother Rizviel von Einsborn. This photo is from their wedding day," Issei replied with a nostalgic and slightly sad smile. "Hey, you slightly resemble them," said Bombras, noticing that the shape of Issei's hair resembled that of his grandfather and partly his face with some features of his grandmother. "Yes, they told me, he was practically like their son, although we had no blood relationship," Issei said, putting the photo in the box, seeing that most of the papers were photos of them, and some with a young version of his mother, and at the end several photos of them with him as a young man, the last one being the one in which he was 12 years old. "If I've seen it, how is that?" asked the dragon. "My grandfather saved my mother when she was little. A madman who deserted the church had killed her parents, accusing them of having made a contract with the devil, which now thinking about it, it seems that they did, but anyway, he saved her and adopted her. But when she became a teenager she ran away with my dad and had no contact with them until I was 7 years old when I met them," said the brown-haired boy, raising a paper that was a note. "Note. For some of my grandchildren who will surely be Issei, in this note or letter, whatever, will be my will. This will only be for you, while your parents will have the will of your grandmother Rizviel. I'm already saying that your parents will keep the money of both. I wish it weren't like that because of the negligent activity and more of your parents, but there is no other way. I want all of you to have no problem and live in peace, although surely Mickey will buy a damn mansion with the money, which I hope he doesn't, but whatever. You should already know the story of how I saved your mother and adopted her as our daughter. Well, what that guy from the church said was true. Her parents practically made a contract with a demon, and I know, this seems crazy and more, but it's true, the supernatural exists, it hides among modern loneliness, going unnoticed pretending to be from the human world, everything exists, demons. Fallen angels and angels, even what has nothing to do with the Christian religion, Poseidon, Zeus, Anubis, Adonaides, mermaids, dragons and etc. and more etc. And I got involved, or rather, my crazy father got me involved in that world. I did a lot of things in it, like being a vigilante and all that silly hero stuff, but I also had to sacrifice a lot, my teacher Natalia Kaminsky, whom I considered like a mother, and several things. I was known as the sorcerer killer. I was like a kind of mercenary, but I won't go into that subject at all. The fact is that I made several enemies throughout my life. I managed to kill most of them, but not all of them, and most likely they are looking for revenge. I would go after them, but now I am just an old man without strength, so I can't do it, so I leave this so that you know what is in the world. The safest thing is that they find this hidden in a box, just in case the cabin is in a safe place, but I still don't trust much in the magic dome that their grandmother made. I hope she doesn't read this, but leaving that aside, the cabin has several places, secrets like the basement. There is a secret door there that will take them to a hallway with several rooms, it's like a kind of bunker. There is everything there, a door that will take them to a pocket space-time dimension of more than 20 kilometers. I know I exaggerated in that, but I prefer it that way before an attacker weapon reaches the door and they are locked in there. There should also be my personal arsenal of weapons, both edged weapons and firearms or long-distance weapons, of different types, modern and ancient, and a few shields. There should also be a library that Rizviel made. There you should find several things related to the supernatural world, along with everything she learned and more. But one of the most important things should be hidden in my and my grandmother's room, under a way that is under the bed. They also talk about other things there. But anyway, here I leave what I had to tell you. I hope you use this to protect yourselves from my old enemies. I'm really sorry about that. Anyway, I trust that you will be fine. I have faith in you. If I have not said any of this until you turned 18, you would surely be dead next to your grandmother. I want you to know that we love you and appreciate you. Take care of yourself and do not trust any supernatural being. The fallen angels are arrogant and proud, who at the same time lustful. They will only use you or kill you. The demons are the same case. They will deceive you and make you their slaves. There is nothing wrong with angels, but they seem really idiots to me if they offer to be an angel to you. Do not do it or you will lose your freedom, which is the same case as becoming demons. And well, I do not want to prolong things any longer, so I will only say that you do not trust almost anyone. I hope you read this. See you on the other side. Goodbye. Once Issei stopped reading the letter, he remained silent, without saying anything and analyzing what he read. It seems that your grandfather had the same vision of the supernatural world as you, said Bombers, bringing the brown-haired boy out of his thoughts. Yes, you're right, said Issei, finished putting away all the papers, keeping the will and then heading to his grandparents' room. Once there he entered her and went to a double bed, where he looked underneath it, seeing a floorboard slightly raised, so using his superhuman strength, he moved the bed enough so that he could have direct access to the floorboard. Once that was done, he took the wooden board and removed it easily, finding a large briefcase with a handle and its lock facing up. He took it and lifted it, seeing that it was really long. He looked at it in his hands and placed it on the ground and then opened it. Surprisingly, he found some more papers, 2 books that emitted a magical aura. He saw them and took them for a moment, feeling a familiar sensation in them, but he put them back in their place, then saw that there was another briefcase, a smaller one, which he took and placed it to the side, removing the safety lock and opening it, surprised to see 2 firearms similar to revolvers, which had a note on top. Note: here I leave 2 guns made by me. They do not need ammunition, since your mana are their bullets. From a tiny fragment of your mana, it will create bullets of origin. Be careful not to shoot yourself, or you will end up in your last moments of life agonizing and praying to God for that to end. Whoever takes these weapons will have a tiny and insignificant fragment of the soul taken from them, and only descendants will be able to have it. Issei looked at the guns with curiosity, so he took one in each hand and felt his mana being stolen. After that, the black part of the guns lit up, the one on the left hand in blue and the one on the right hand in red. Wow, they look great, Issei said with a smile. Partner, I have an idea. Bring them closer to the gem, said Bombers from the gem on Issei's wrist, which appeared at the same time as the dragon spoke. Issei only caught the order and brought one of them closer to the gem, touching it with the barrel of the weapon, which exploded into particles of light which entered the gem. What was that? Issei asked. He thinks about the gun, Bombers answered, and Issei just did that, and the gun in a red flash appeared in his right hand, now being black. And this? Asked the brown-haired boy, surprised. I think you're forgetting that items can be adapted to sacred gears of the same type as mine, Bombers said, and Issei laughed nervously. If you're right, I forgot for a moment, Issei said, then adapted the other firearm to his sacred gear. After that, the brown-haired boy put the small briefcase in the big one and went to the papers, but when he passed his hand under them to take them, he felt something cold, so pushing them aside out of curiosity, he found a scroll with metallic decorations that had the word servant contract, so he took it, seeing that it had a note. Note: for one of my grandsons, this is a spiritual type summoning familiar contract. I had one when I was younger, although I had a lot of problems with a servant I had to work with. If I remember correctly, he tried to kill me once, but whatever, this contract serves as a blood sacrifice. Just put a drop of it and the contract will be made, Master Servant. This contract can only be used by one person and will summon a maximum of 4 servants. The servants will be chosen according to the life or characteristics of the user of the contract. If you are a swordsman, the servant will be a swordsman. If you use magic, the servant will be a magician. On the side of your life, if you seek revenge, the servant will be a being that sought or seeks revenge. If your heart was broken, the servant that will be summoned too, and so on. Once the drop of blood is put, the contract will have a built-in clock, since uniting the master and servant, in body and soul, will take a few days, apart from accumulating enough mana to do the summoning. Do it, I know what kind of servant you are referring to, said Bombers excitedly. How's that? Issei asked, confused. The summoned servants are spirits from the past, heroes, beasts, monsters, villains, assassins, etc. It is the same as the Master Familiar Pact, but instead of a beast or monster, these are the spirits of legendary humans, or those who were once humans, but their stories are known and left their mark on the evolution of history, Bombers replied. I mean, he thinks about it a bit. Will I be able to summon King Arthur? Issei asked excitedly. Yes, and more, unless you can summon like 4 servants, Bombers said excitedly to Issei. Heh, I'll gladly do it, Issei said, opening the scroll. Seeing several runes and 4 circles formed by runes, he created a small sword and made a small cut on his little finger, then dropped a drop of blood on each circle. The drop of blood was absorbed by the paper, and the runes glowed red, blue and silver. After that he returned to normal. That should do it, said Bombers after seeing what happened. Yes, I also think that's enough, Issei said, and then put the scroll away in his clothes. Time after. Issei was leaving his grandparents' cabin. He had one of the papers from the briefcase in his hand and looked at him with a neutral face. He didn't know how to react to what he said. We better go home, Bomber said in Issei's mind, bringing him out of his thoughts. Yes, that's what I'll do, Issei said, then put the document away in his clothes and started walking. By the way, have you already broken the second seal, the one that blocks the skills you copy? Issei asked. No, I need more time or you or I will explode emotionally, replied Bombers. What if I explode emotionally? Issei asked confused. Let me explain, you already know that every dragon has its respective abilities, some inherited from their parents, also being the case of the reincarnated, but in a smaller percentage, like 43% of the reincarnated can have an ability. That being your case, you obtained an ability that converts your negative or positive emotions into power, both spiritual and physical. Obviously, depending on your resistance you can reach a certain point of creation of power, so my plan is to use that ability of yours to break the second seal, answered Bombers. I see, Issei said, somewhat thoughtful. But anyway, pick up the pace, I'm already getting sleepy, said Bombers. Issei just nodded and activated a higher percentage of his magic circuit and began to run at high speed. Shortly after he arrived home, he entered it and walked past ignoring everyone. Once in his room he was greeted by a happy rover. Hey, calm down little one, said Issei, petting the monster dog as he climbed onto his shoulder. After calming his young familiar, Issei sat on his bed tired. What do you plan to do now, buddy? Bombers asked. No lose. He lays down on his bed and Rover follows him, getting under the sheets and being hugged by Issei. I really don't know, Issei said. His right eye turned golden and the left one turned blue, but just at that moment he fell asleep. Bombers let out a sigh and then spoke. Rest, friend, you've earned it, said Bombers, and then did the same as his friend and went to the world of dreams. Issei subconscious. You know, this already seems boring to me, said Avenger, stopping a thrust from Ruler. And more so since we have these power-ups, he added, and then his eyes turned red and he sent out a wave of pure power, pushing Ruler away. Ruler's eyes glowed blue and sky blue fire came out of his left eye, then he created 2 more swords, putting one in his mouth and then launching himself at Avenger, thus beginning an even battle. But soon Avenger began to match rules when his right eye began to emanate red fire. Does this one forget? The more time passes, the evolution ability will make me more powerful and stronger, said the red-eyed man. Ruler only looked at him seriously and then increased his power, surprising Avenger. You forget that it's my same case, said Ruler, launched himself against Avenger, but at that moment several demonic swords pierced him. Heh, you thought I didn't see that coming, but whatever, Avenger said as he started to leave. What are you doing? Ruler asked, seeing how his counterpart was leaving the place. I need Issei to fall deeper and deeper into darkness, for his negative emotions to predominate over the positive ones, and for that I have to break him, and now I ask you, what happens when a female rejects a dragon? Avenger asked, smiling at Ruler's look of horror. Why you can't do that, said Rules, desperately trying to get out. Of course I can, I just won't do it now that you know it. I'll do it if you least expect it, little brother, said Avenger while a sharp smile revealing fangs appeared on his face. The next day. Issei was waking up, he saw Rover next to him, but he left him sleeping. He got out of his bed and started his day, changing, going downstairs and greeting everyone, being ignored by most or being insulted by them. After that the brown-haired boy left his hours. No. Before breakfast, on the way he met Elizabeth and Saji. Unfortunately Mito was also there, which made the walk an uncomfortable situation until they arrived at the academy, where they each divided up, and before they went to their respective classes, Issei, Saji and Mito were called by their respective clan leaders. That after classes they should go to the student council. With Elizabeth. We should start by killing the Grimoire, Ashbourne said in the black-haired girl's mind. Ashbourne, I won't kill anyone, besides, you said it yourself, don't kill anyone, or I'll be in trouble, said Elizabeth while in her living room bored. Well, I did say that, but I only changed my opinion after seeing how you attempted a semi-attack on the Redeed, which only led to your crush getting a bucket of glue dropped on her head, Ashbourne said. The black-haired girl blushed in embarrassment. It wasn't my intention, besides I'm not in love with Issei-kun, said Elizabeth with her forehead against the table. You say that, but your blush gives you away, and the fact that you call him with that suffix kun gives you away even more, Ashbourne said normally. Damn, why are you so insensitive about these issues? Elizabeth asked desperately. I just never had time for this, and when I tried, every woman ran away from me. I never found what they call first love or true love, Ashbourne answered without any interest. Did you try it with men? Elizabeth asked with an evil smile. Not really, but even if I wanted to, I can't. I'm a sacred gear because of the biblical God, Ashbourne responded with a certain innocence. I think you didn't understand, but whatever, said Elizabeth, raising her head and seeing a blonde-haired man approaching her. Hello, you are Elizabeth Copiado, right? Kiba said, approaching Elizabeth. If that's how I am, what can I help you with, Kiba-san? Elizabeth asked, beginning to hear the whispers of her companions. Not much actually, but my club president wants to talk to you after class, Kiba replied. Yes, I'll be there, Elizabeth replied with a smile. Okay, thanks, we'll see each other at the occult club, Kiba said, and then left the place. She smiles as her hair covers her eyes. Gremory, you are really stupid to bring the Grim Reaper before you, Elizabeth thought. After school with Issei. The brown-haired boy was walking through the halls of the abandoned building. He arrived at the main room of the occult club. Standing in front of the door, he was about to knock to receive permission from one of his loved ones, but at that moment he heard Riaz and Sona talking. Riaz, when are you going to stop using Issei like this? Said the black-haired girl. I'll use it until he dies, the Redeed replied without any interest. Mate, get out of here, said Bombras, but Issei just ignored him, which worried the dragon. How can you say that, after everything he did for you, Sona said angrily. She had to put her hand behind her, making a sign to feel the slight alteration in Saji's mana, giving him the order to do nothing. He is only a pawn, a simple object that I can use to my advantage to fulfill my dream of being the queen of the raiding games, a shield if I manage to copy the Phoenix's immorality ability. He is only a pervert and useless for most things, at least that will be of use to me, Riaz answered without any shamelessness. How can you think that way about him? He loves you, Sona asked incredulously. Why is he like that, apart from the fact that I don't feel anything for him apart from disgust and rejection, and I'm not the only one who thinks that way about him, Riaz responded with arrogance. Riaz-san is right, he is just a good-for-nothing useless, he is not like Isaac, he is a man, said Akeno carrying. I support Riaz 1E-san, he's just a pervert and he's not worth it, he's just pretending to be someone kind and annoying to us, because he wants to do something to us. Said Kaneko with her typical monotonous look. I think the same as Kaneko-san and Riaz 1E-sama, he's just a good-for-nothing pervert who wants to take advantage of us. Asia said with annoyance. Hiba and Saji, who heard that, got angry, as did the girls from the Citri clan, but Tsubaki, Momo and Mito were the most upset. As said Saji, but at that moment they heard someone running outside the room, which alarmed everyone. Most people had an idea of what it was. The Gremory got nervous, while the others got worried, except Isaac and Canny, who smiled at it, knowing that the one who ran away was their older brother. They always liked to see him suffer. But Issei. He was flying with his dragon wings while crying. A pain began to appear in his chest, and then it increased, and the brown-haired boy began to have difficulty flying, so he had no choice but to descend to the ground, falling into the park where it all began, where he was killed by Rainer. You should never have believed in them, Issei said, a voice that he recognized behind him, being that of his murderer Rainer. Shut up, said the brown-haired boy, holding his head. Just look at you, so pathetic, so weak, if only you weren't like this wouldn't have happened to you, Rainer's voice said mockingly. Out of desperation, Issei materialized a gun in his right hand, whose red light shone brightly, so without thinking he opened fire. 1 2 3 5 9 were the times that Issei shot at nothing, since Rainer was never behind his back. Now, tell me, Issei, another voice, similar to his, spoke to him behind his back. Turning around he would find Avenger, who was looking at him seriously. What are you planning to do now? Asked a white-haired man, but in the distance both entourages were approaching. When they were close enough, they saw Issei lying on his knees on the floor, in his left hand a black firearm with red lights. Desperate and worried, Saji approached him, but someone got there first. Issei, Elizabeth shouted, running towards the brown-haired boy. She had gone to the occult club, but she only saw Issei running out of it and then spreading his dragon wings, and soon after both Riaz and Sona, accompanied by their entourages, followed him, to which she followed them. But at that moment when Elizabeth approached him and crouched down to his height to see his condition, the brown-haired boy began to vomit blood, while his magic circles activated at 100%. After that, the brown-haired boy fell unconscious in the arms of the black-haired girl, who only worried more about him. Damn idiots, don't stay there, you're Citri, I know your clan has hospitals in the underworld, so a teleportation circle now, Elizabeth ordered, carrying Issei in her arms princess style. Sona was startled by Elizabeth's order, which emitted an aura that she had rarely seen in her life, the aura of a steel queen combined with that of death itself, so the black-haired girl with glasses did not hesitate and began to create a magic circle while Elizabeth approached them. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.